Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting session. It is Tuesday, June 14th, 2022. It is 9:05 a.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're in Building 1, Room 280. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. Vice Chair Ty Menser in the boardroom. Commissioner Gary Edwards
just joined
us via Zoom. And County Manager Ramiro Chavez. Good morning, Commissioner Edwards. I'm just doing introductions right now. County Manager Ramiro Chavez in the boardroom, as well as Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell. There is someone sitting beside her, but I cannot see who it is. I apologize.
So this is Jennifer Smith from our budget office, and she is shadowing me today.
Perfect. And then we have our clerk of the board, Jamie Caldwell. We have many staff members joining us via Zoom. So today, our first topic on our agenda is our COVID-19 update, but Judge Wilson is joining us for an item that we reviewed last week that's on today's agenda. And due to the timing of it, we're going to address that matter first. And so that is on today's agenda as I'm scrolling past, and it is consent item A, which is Superior Court, a resolution adopting the revised court staff attorney classification, specification, and reclassify position 06R00164 from the Thurston County At-Will Pay Plan and the Thurston County Management and Technical Pay Plan. County Manager?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. You had a discussion about this item last week. And the proposals for you to consider reclassifying a law clerk position to a court staff attorney within the Superior Court. This particular classification has an impact on the budget. It goes from $6,344 to $9,000 a month. That will be just about an increase of $2,656 or 42% increase. At this point, Superior Court is able to absorb this particular request if the board approves within the current budget. So they are not requesting additional budget authority to implement this item. But as the board has discussed, although it's covered on this year's budget, this will be an increase for next year as become part of the base budget for Superior Court if the boards approve that. And I know that you had some questions, so maybe I can just leave to the commissioners to ask those questions directly to Judge Wilson. Commissioner Messer.
Just one direct on that point. Is that analysis the biennium, or is that this year only? Like when you say that it then builds into their budget for...
So it's this year's only because next year in 2023 becomes the base budget. So they will cover they will through salary savings just this year.
Okay, so I'll give County Manager the floor to Judge Wilson to see if she wants to do any introduction on the item. And then after that, I'll pass it off to the commissioners for questions. Judge Wilson?
Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer questions. And Georgia Christian, our budget manager, was here last week. I was in trial, and she passed on some of the questions that came up. But if I don't understand them specifically, please let me know. Quick overview: we presently have 2 law clerk positions. Those were created about 2+ years ago. We filled them in early 2020. We had some prior history of different kinds of positions, which I can address in a moment. But the reason for those 2 positions is we had identified the need for basically legal research, writing, and memos, and helping the judges with complex areas that we work on. Our 2 law clerk positions have been filled for most of the last 2 years, and they've been very helpful. They are what I would consider entry-level positions, and from a recruitment retention standpoint, we are having difficulty retaining people. We lost one to another state agency or a state agency, but we also have assessed our needs And our needs include a higher level of support for the judges and the court, including working on our ex parte systems that we do collaboratively with the clerk, that we process ex parte matters, our local rules that are mandatory, updated on an annual basis, ADA accommodations, and other recurring complex areas that a person who has legal training and familiarity with the court is well suited to address. And so our staff attorney position is to add those higher level complex duties and to add a supervisory role. Our vision to meet the court's current needs is one staff attorney and one law clerk, with the expectation that the law clerk would be entry level out of law school to do primarily legal research and writing, and the staff attorney would do the same, as well as the additional functions I mentioned and the supervisory. Historically, we've had a variety of ways of meeting our court needs. Some years ago, we had a position that was half staff attorney, half court commissioner. We changed that position to the law clerk concept when we got additional court commissioner resources, because our in-court needs were addressed by those additional resources. So we think that this will allow us to recruit and retain good folks and meet the court's higher level needs with experience. That's our primary reason for asking to do that adjustment. I think Commissioner Edwards had asked a question about how this compares to the positions, for example, the civil attorneys at the prosecutor's office, so the deputy prosecuting attorneys in the civil division. I think there's some parallels in that they're high level familiarity with the subject area that they work in. And then the difference is the staff attorney at the court is familiar with the legal issues that frequently come up before the court, as well as the legal requirements to our processes like ADA accommodations and local rules. And so they become familiar and they are basically giving us internal advice. We still, as a department of the county, go to the civil deputy prosecutors for external legal advice. So there's a little bit of apples and oranges, but some overlap. I would think of them, but again, I don't supervise the civil deputy prosecutors, as somewhat akin to each other, if you will. So I think that is my overview. If there are topics I didn't address, I'm very happy to try to answer your questions.
Commissioner Edwards, we'll start with questions with you.
I think the judge has answered my questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Menzer, questions?
No.
Judge Wilson, I do have questions. In regards to, you said that you have two positions and one of them is empty currently right now. And is the empty law clerk position the one that you plan to put on for recruitment as a staff attorney? Or
yes. Sorry. HR indicated that we needed to have the open position be the one that we asked to reallocate. So that's the position we're asking to reallocate or reclassify. I'm sorry.
I guess it's more of a concern more than a question. You know, we've been hearing from the prosecutor's office as well as public defense, just their troubles in hiring right now, is specifically for qualified attorneys. And I'm wondering if you already have someone in mind. Is this or is this position going, you know, are you going to be going through the same struggles that they are currently?
So we have a person with about 3 years, a little less years experience in our law clerk position, and we would anticipate that that person would be eligible to apply. When you ask, do we have somebody in mind? We haven't identified for certain who would be a good fit. In terms of reclassifying a position, our hope is that whoever would fill it would be high level, able to meet the court's demands that I described, and have the incentive to stay rather than look elsewhere because of the nature of the law clerk positions being entry level and that lawyers can make more money elsewhere, even in the public sector. I don't know if that fully answers your question. I'm sympathetic towards the prosecutors and the public defenders because we have, of course, observed turnover, and we, a year ago heard several left for Pierce County prosecutor's office, presumably for higher compensation. And we have an interest, of course, everybody has an interest in retaining high quality lawyers in those two offices. I don't know if that fully answered your question.
Okay. Any additional comments, questions?
No questions from me.
Okay. Well, thank you, Judge Wilson.
Okay, I'll wait to hear back from Manager Romero if I should appear this afternoon. Thank you for adjusting your schedule. I'm going to listen to the public health update if there's time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. With that, we'll go to the COVID-19 update. Kurt.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kurt Harden, Interim Director for Public Health and Social Services. I'm joined by Dr. Abdulmalik, who is at a TB training up in Seattle. So she is joining us remotely. First of all, I want to start off by saying that on June 20th, it will be 2.5 years since we started the response for COVID-19. The first patient in the state was diagnosed on January 20th, 2020, and as also the first patient in the country. So as I go into our update, the numbers for our case count is as of June 12th. And so let me go in with total cases here are 52,268 as reported by the state. Unfortunately, the deaths in Thurston County are 434, again, as reported by the state. The 14-day average rate per 100,000 has dropped from last week. It is 432.3 as of June 12th. Last week, it was 516.5. And I will say that this is the first time the 14-day per 100,000 case rate has dropped since April 17th. Hospitalization data is as of June 12th as well. And total hospitalizations since the start of the pandemic are 2,404. Current COVID patients as of June 12th, we have 16 COVID patients hospitalized. And then that compares to last week when we had 17 and the week before we had 22. So hovering right around the same range for the number of patients. Our ICU available capacity is 43 adults, and our acute bed availability is 270 adults as reported by the state, but we're confirming that number because that may be a typo, as that number is a fairly significant jump. Congregate care outbreaks as of June 13th. We've had 219 congregate care outbreaks since March of 2020, and currently we have 27 ongoing congregate care outbreaks. For vaccination, our total vaccine doses in Thurston County are at 544,943. And this data is also as of June 11th. Percent of people initiating vaccination is 72.9%. Percent of people fully vaccinated is 66.2%. The percentage of people initiating vaccine 16 and older is 82.8%. And the percentage of people fully vaccinated age 16 and older is 75.2%. And the percent of the population initiating vaccine age 5 and older is 77.1%. And then the percent of population fully vaccinated age 5 and older is 70%. And then the percentage of people receiving a booster age 12 and older is 59.1%. And again, all that is as of June 11th. 2022. Vaccination clinics. Right now, we have a vaccination clinic scheduled on Thursday, June 8th at the Lacey Senior Center from 1 to 4 p.m. We will continue our Capitol Mall vaccination clinic this Thursday through Sunday, and that will be 11 to 8 Thursday through Saturday, and then Capitol Mall clinic on Sunday will be 11 to 6. And as always, appointments are encouraged, but walk-ins are always welcome. And testing, today we're testing at the same locations today, tomorrow, Thursday and Friday. Today, Rochester location in the roof parking lot next to the Boys and Girls Club. tomorrow, we'll be testing at the in Lacey at 3811 Pacific Avenue. Thursday in Olympia, we'll be testing at the Union Gospel Mission. And then Friday, again, testing at the Evergreen State College. All those times for testing is 10 to 1. And then last week, I know Commissioner Edwards asked the number of people being tested on a daily basis, and it averages between 5 and 10, depending on the location on a daily basis for the test sites. And once again, for vaccination and testing, those are all ramping down as of June 30th. And then starting July 1st, our vaccination and our testing will be on a surge capacity or to address specific issues. And then also we will be doing vaccine clinics, mobile vaccine clinics around the county as well on the scheduled basis. And we'll be publishing those schedules. At this point, I'll turn it over to Dr. Abdelmalik for her portion of the update.
Good morning, commissioners. So we are seeing overall downtrends in our community transmission, looking at that 14-day average per 100,000. In terms of the 7-day average, we did see a dip, and we're seeing a little bit of an upswing there. So we definitely continue to monitor COVID-19 transmission in our county going forward. We are awaiting FDA and CDC review of the vaccines for those 6 and under for Moderna and 5 and under for Pfizer. And we are prepared to initiate rollout when they're approved through the appropriate process, which after the CDC goes to the Western States Pact and then to our State Department of Health before we're able to dispense. In terms of some of the questions that we talked about a little bit last week, in terms of disease severity and reinfection rates, with the Omicron surge, we're still, the risk of reinfection increased once Omicron became the dominant variant over prior variants. In terms of the level of, in terms of disease severity, we did see a decrease in disease severity. We also saw an increase both in infections in folks that were up to date on vaccine, as well as folks who'd been previously infected. There is some data from South Africa and Qatar, among others, and we're still learning quite a bit that suggests that prior infection is protective against severe illness and death, but there's still a lot that we're learning. But I did want to share that information with all of you today. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have. Thank you so much, commissioners.
Thank you. Before we get started on questions, I know later on in our agenda we have our COVID-19 resolutions, and there were questions directed towards Dr. A last week, or there were some questions. So I would like to go ahead and address that topic earlier on while we have Dr. A here and available. But first, questions on the COVID-19 update. Commissioner Edwards, we'll start with you.
No, I think my main question was whether there was an immunity from a prior infection. Thank you. And you've answered that.
Okay, Commissioner Menser, questions?
For Kurt, you mentioned acute bed availability, and then you gave a number. What does that mean, acute bed availability?
What that means is the number of beds available. Acute bed availability is a specialized care. And I know Dr. Abdelmalik can go more into detail on what that specialized care in those rooms mean. But that number is, if I'm looking at the, and I'm pulling it back, I'm going back to that number, but it was 270, acute bed availability, 270. If you notice, that is almost 10 times what we've had in previous weeks. So we think that's a typo. So we're confirming that with the State Department of Health. And Dr. Abdelmalik, I don't know if you want to update more about what the acute bed availability consists of.
So in general, that's just looking at our available hospital beds in the acute care setting, not including our intensive care beds.
Yeah, I guess the 270 just seemed like a number that A, didn't fit the metric, and B, didn't seem to be, I don't remember what the previous numbers were, but it just caught my attention. But it sounds like maybe that's just not the right number. What's a typical number from a previous week, Kurt? Did you hear my question? What would be a typical number from a past week?
Right, thank you. I'm sorry. I am pulling that number up right now from a previous week. Hold on just a second. Last week, I believe the number was, as I'm pulling it up, 12.
Yes, okay, so
So
probably
as
somebody's finger slipped on the keyboard.
yeah, as I was reading it, what I should have said was, and I'm not that fast as I'm reading and thinking, I should have said, oh, this number needs to be verified. But I read it right off as I'm reading the sheet, and my apologies.
That's okay. I started thinking, well, maybe sometimes terminology is counterintuitive, and maybe that means how many are full, even though they call it availability. But although that would kind of be confusing, but anyway, all right, thank you.
Okay. So with that, we'll move on to the COVID-19 resolutions, and it's in regards to the local emergency resolution number 16078 and vaccination and testing requirements resolution number 16067. County Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. The local emergency resolution 16078 is scheduled to lapse with no action by the board by the end of June. My recommendation is for the board to consider let it lapse, because I don't believe we need that local emergency resolution any longer. In vaccination and testing requirements resolution number 16067, that is not lapsing by itself, that requires an action by the board to rescind it. My recommendation on that resolution is for the board to consider rescinding that resolution as far as my little humble perspective, is no longer effective to continue testing county employees who have chosen not to get vaccinated. The effectiveness of that testing is no longer applicable, at least from my point of view. So those are the two items that are on your agenda, and those are my recommendations for the two resolutions.
Questions, comments? Commissioner Munster, we'll start with you.
Guess I'll just put Dr. Abdulmalik on the spot. Do you see an unreasonable public health risk if the board were to follow the county manager's recommended actions?
So at this point in time, in terms of weekly testing, it does, what we've seen is that COVID spreads quickly, and typically is the incubation period for the Omicron variant and subvariants is shorter. The highest yield testing is really for those who are symptomatic or who have been exposed to COVID-19. So I support the county manager's recommendation.
I don't have any other questions now. I might circle back after you guys ask yours.
Thank you. I guess my question, right, is we've been hearing about the pediatric vaccines and the possibility for them to come out. Mine has to do a little bit more with the local emergency resolution. And will we need an emergency resolution to be able to set up a mass vaccination site for children under 5 who want to get vaccinated? Is that going to be a possibility without the emergency resolution, or is that something that we need to have in place to maybe get refunded by FEMA? How does that work?
So I can answer that one, Commissioner. We do not need a local emergency proclamation or emergency declaration for the funding from FEMA at this point in time. The funding will shift on July 1st, or is scheduled, I should say, to shift on July 1st from 100% funding to, they'll go to a 90-10 split, but they will still maintain the FEMA funding, is what I've been informed, at a 90-10 split until December 31st. Now, that's what the current plan is, but we should be fine without that. The other piece on that is, if a situation arises that we need an emergency proclamation, the county ordinance is set up to allow for a quick process to establish an emergency proclamation fairly quickly that the Board of County Commissioners can then validate at their next scheduled meeting.
Okay, thank you, Kurt, for that. And then my next question is in regards to what will end with the local emergency resolution?
Mainly is what will end is takes the responsibility out of the county manager to implement human personnel policies that will no longer be in place, and also will take away the procurement process that we have exercised. And that was very effective during the height of the emergency, because we were able to secure services without going through the normal procurement process. So that also will go away. And the last two main issues we have not exercised as part of the resolution in the last few months.
Thank you. Okay,
Commissioner, may have questions, Madam Chair?
Commissioner Edwards, do you have questions?
Yes, I'm wondering why we wouldn't want to rescind both resolutions at the same time. I guess one is going to expire in a couple of weeks anyway, but why not just get it over with and rescind them? Why even drag it out for another 2 weeks? Because I'd be asking maybe the county manager or the doctor or Kurt, I don't know.
I mean, the question as to why, I really don't have an answer to that. I'm just stating the fact that resolution 16078 lapses at the end of the month. If the board wants to take a different action to rescind that quicker, that's within your purview.
And my other question would be over retention and hiring. Are we going to get back to normal where we can hire people even though they did not feel they needed a vaccination? And what about those that we maybe let go? Are we going to try to bring them back?
We didn't let anybody go. I think some employees may have chosen to leave the county because of this resolution. But the board, I believe the county only took an action on one staff member, but at the end, that person resigned from the county. So the county never took an action to let employees go.
How about the hiring?
We have
We never
not,
stopped the hiring. I
That's
proposed it.
right.
I said I would scrap these resolutions months ago if we would make that agreement, and you didn't want to agree to that, so we
Didn't want me to-
vaccination has never been a
hiring,
tradition of
not hiring
hiring.
folks that weren't vaccinated.
I've always been in favor of letting the citizen make the choice.
Right, but I said if we adopted a policy where we didn't hire people that were not vaccinated, I would agree to scrap these resolutions a couple months ago. So the point being, we don't have that policy. That would have been something we would have had to have adopted. We've never had a policy not to hire people that weren't vaccinated.
But I think what Commissioner Edwards may ask is, because since we have this vaccination test requirements, new employees came under the umbrella of that resolution.
Right.
So either
They could make their choice.
they can make their choice whether to get vaccinated or submit to the weekly testing,
Right.
but never was. As you
But when we
stated.
rescind this, that won't be there.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So it's taken care of.
Yep.
Right? I mean, does that make sense to you?
Well, I don't know if it makes sense the way you're articulating it. I think, I just want to make sure that we get back to normalcy in all facets of our operation. And that includes being able to hire people that can say, I did not get vaccinated and I don't intend to get vaccinated. I want to hire those people as well as retain those people.
So if the board considered rescinding this vaccination and testing, that will no longer be a requirement.
Okay.
identify
And
that.
so we don't need to worry about this 2 weeks that until this other one lapses, it has no effect.
It's two different resolutions.
I know it is two different resolutions, but absolutely no effect on anything if we just let it run its course and run out.
The emergency resolution, at least from my perspective, no, sir.
I would like to request that the emergency resolution is allowed to run its course through the end of this month because we are bringing in one last contract under the emergency purchasing rule, and that's for the formula and diapers.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So, and that should be ready in the next 2 weeks, but it's not ready
Next week.
today.
And then that'd be a good
Next
reason.
week.
Sure,
Sounds
that'd be
next week.
a valid reason to keep it in place, okay. Okay, I'm good to get back to normal. I'm ready to go.
Commissioner Munster?
Are you asking for my vote or, I don't have any
Yeah.
questions.
Yes. Going around the table a second time.
Yeah, I'm good with the county manager's proposal.
Yes,
Okay.
me as well.
So you have 2 thumbs up.
You're not voting?
Madam Chair, what is your position?
And I'll vote yes for this as well.
Okay, thank you. So with your concurrence, then I will bring a simple item this afternoon to this agenda. Most likely the consent agenda to rescind resolution 16067. And that is the vaccination and testing requirements for you to take an action this afternoon.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. A. Thank you, Kurt, for sticking around for this conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, going back, I'm sorry, I'm jumping a little bit around on our agenda today. Going to homeless strategies, Keely.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Keely Marino with Public Health and Social Services. I am going to be here all morning, so I'll keep my update fairly brief. We continue to meet with Washington Department of Transportation, Washington State Patrol, Department of Commerce, City of Olympia, on a daily basis to discuss and plan for actions that are being requested by the governor around Department of Transportation right-of-way camps. A number of items will be coming forwards to you today regarding this update. So other than that, I have not much more to report, though I do see Tom is here and he can give you an update on rent assistance.
Good morning, Commissioner. Sorry, it took me a second to get my video running. So just a quick update on rent assistance. So Live Stories has, last week we had $3.2 million distributed to 342 families. They have another 97 applications that we paid this week, representing approximately another $800,000 of rent assistance going out this week. We are closing our portal tomorrow, June 15th, to new applications. So we are continuing to process applications transferred from CAC and those prioritized that have received an eviction notice that are in process. But for new applications, we are closing the portal on the 15th. Live Stories visited us last week, so we had some good meetings with Live Stories in person. They did some additional training for our partner organizations, so we continue to move forward in that vein. But happy to answer any questions around that as well.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, for Keely, you said we're gonna hear something later today. I'm just wondering
As
where
part
that is.
as part of the agenda items that we will be covering later today, sir.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Commissioner Munster?
Tom, there was a article in the Olympian about the rent assistance. Did you see that?
I saw one generally about affordable housing. I may have missed one on that was specific to rent assistance, but I did see one talking about kind of increased in rents and the lack of affordable housing.
This one was about Thurston County shutting down the rent, rent assistance is running out and we're backlogged, and it was a pretty negative article in my opinion, and I was wondering if you'd read it, if you had any, I had to read it, I read it really, really fast. So I was just wondering if there were any inaccuracies that you wanted to correct from that article, but if you haven't read it, then I will withdraw the question.
I will go back and read it, but I do not believe I've read that article.
Okay, it was a 3 days ago. Front page, Olympian.
Okay, sorry I missed that one.
Yeah, it's okay.
And you were quoted.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that we go through every Tuesday, and in my super fast read, it didn't seem 100% on point, but like I say, I wanted to get your take because I didn't have a chance to really sit down and dive into it.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Any further questions? We'll move on. Thank you, Keely. Thank you, Tom. Next is the review of our board agenda for today, which is Tuesday, June 14th. We'll call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Vice Chair Menser. Approval of the Tuesday, June 14th, 2022 agenda, and approval of the board meeting minutes from June 7th, 2022. There will be an opportunity for the public to address the board and county manager's update. County manager?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sure you will receive public testimony this afternoon. Don't have anything specific. There's a lot of items that you may receive comments on. Related to my update this afternoon, I will be starting laying out the process in which the related to Resolution 15308, and that is related to fireworks and the discharge of fireworks. I will lay out a little bit what that resolution does, and I will provide a little bit of weather forecast related to that resolution. So I will be playing a weatherman this afternoon a little bit.
Questions, comments?
No questions, thank you.
No.
Okay. Okay, with that, we'll go through consent items. We already reviewed consent item A, which was the Superior Court item first thing this morning. Item B is claim for damages on behalf of the estate of Garrett Miller.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. For your consideration is for you to authorize the risk manager and the prosecuting attorney's office to participate in the settlement negotiations related to a claim for damages submitted on behalf of the state of Mr. Garrett Miller. I cannot elaborate further than that. You were part of the executive session, so I will request the board to consider this action.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Menser?
No.
Okay. Next is the auditor approval of the voucher list, item C.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your considerations to approve the voucher list for the week of May 23rd, 2022 for a combined amount of $1,485,712.68. This is in the consent agenda since there is no items related to the Atrium.
Questions? Commissioner Menser?
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to department items. First, Central Services, item 4A, Thurston County Water Treatment Lab Relocation Design.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your consideration. Is for your review, this item is to approve amendment number 8 with Wood Harbinger Incorporated. He is one of the on-call consultants. They will help us on the development and the design of relocating the water lab that we currently have in Building 1 to Lily Road. And this is in relation to the move to the Atrium, since portions of public health will be moving to the 3000 Pacific. And the lab, the water lab, will not be able to move along with it. So this is an opportunity to do two things: address the move of the 3000 Pacific, and also upgrade the lab amenities that we have. As you heard last week, It's a little bit outdated, and this provides an opportunity to upgrade the lab amenities. Any questions?
Commissioner Edwards,
Yes, that reads move to approve Amendment 8 with this Wood Harbinger Incorporated, but I'm curious, move to approve Amendment 8 of what? For clarification.
This is architect and engineer contract is part of our on-call.
Should it say part of our on-call? I'm just trying to clarify that for the community. I mean, I've been briefed
We
about
could
it several
certainly-
times.
We could certainly add language that this company is from our on-call contracts.
I just think it clarifies it by saying that, that's all.
Sure, we can figure out how to add that.
And then I do want to mention that I took a tour last week of our lab that we've got. Quite impressed. They've got quite an operation going over there. I'm concerned more about the additional cost that is going to be incurred by the county if we were to make this move. Where would the money come from? And it looks like it's gonna be substantial. I know it's gonna be over at the Health Department building, I believe, is where this is gonna take
Yeah,
place.
that is the plan.
So it doesn't affect the Atrium aspect, except we're doing it because of the Atrium issue. And I'm curious where the additional funding is gonna come from to pay for this.
Can you give it a shot on this?
Sure, this will be a combination of REIT one, building reserves, and probably water resource, public health funding.
It is a regional lab, so to speak, you know, it sounds like. Is there any chance that we would get some kind of grant funding from somewhere, I don't know exactly where, to alleviate the burden of this coming out of those other funds that you've just mentioned?
I'm not aware of any grants that are available to upgrade water labs, but we
We
can
can
certainly
certainly explore
look,
that.
but
We can certainly
I'm not
explore
aware
that.
of any.
And I think if the board approves this item, is just to give us a perspective as how much it's gonna cost to move the lab. If you like, I can really give you by the numbers, how many samples we do on the lab on that.
Oh, we do a lot. I went over that whole process with staff, and I have to commend staff. They do a great job with a minimal infrastructure set up over there, I guess, to do it, is what I'd say. My concern is, as this ties in with everything else, until we finally get to that point that we know for a fact we're going to be moving, because I'm not 100% sure that it's all going to take place yet. That's my concern, spending the money maybe unnecessarily, maybe, we just don't know yet. And that's from my perspective, so thank you, Madam Chair, that's it for me.
Commissioner Menzer, did you have a
Any
question
questions?
about
I
the
think,
slide?
Oh, Shemar Lasser, connectivity. I don't have a question. I was just reviewing notes from last week, and my understanding was that I wrote the current lab is outdated, not up to code standard, and would potentially not be able to redress those concerns within current space. So it seems like there's several different things going on here rather than just, well, let's just move it because it's part of the move. I mean, it seems like it's something we're gonna have to address anyway, is part of my thinking. But, you know, obviously, it's expensive. Commissioner Mejia, I think I'm done. I don't have any questions on this one.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for picking up. I kind of dropped off there for a sec. Okay, Chris, I don't have any questions about this. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
could I get one more quick question? I don't know that Chris will have the answer, but
Go ahead, sir.
as this is being reviewed, I got the sense that the staff and the management over there have a pretty good handle on everything needed and what it might take. So the comment about upgrading, maybe to meet current needs or maybe regulatory oversight, I'm not sure what that is about. I'd like to get an answer, I guess, from the folks over there, maybe the management of that operation, and see what they think they need before we talk about spending, I don't know, $250,000 or something on this issue.
Chris,
Yes.
was the CPED staff involved in the pre-design work for this?
PHSS staff is definitely
Sorry,
involved.
yeah.
That's okay. Health department is definitely involved. And we have had the discussions with them about how the systems need to be upgraded. There are codes and standards that are not currently being adhered to in the space that they're using. As you can see, Commissioner Edwards, it is pretty cramped. The equipment is old and it does need to be upgraded. So yes, they've been absolutely involved in the pre-design process, and keeping in mind that this is a not to exceed price. So the hours that we use will be charged, but any hours we don't use on this contract will not be charged us as a not to exceed type of a contract. So we did our best estimation for a rough order magnitude of cost of the facility, of renovating a facility. And this was the appropriate cost for that ultimate construction cost for renovating and upgrading that facility and moving it to another location. So the design, it's design work. It's also post-construction award services, which go along with commissioning of the systems after the fact and everything required to ensure an efficient and code compliant operation of that facility once it's constructed. Hope that helps.
Madam Chair, I have a question if I could.
Go ahead, Commissioner Menser.
This question may be for Art, who I see is on here, but I guess I'm just curious now, these questions have piqued my interest. The upgrades that this lab needs, will that allow us to do more tests, do them cheaper, do them get more accurate results? Like, what are the upgrades gonna yield in terms of a better result for the citizens?
Did you want me to try to answer that?
Yeah, if you could.
I mean, I think I've not been as directly involved as some of our other staff on the project, but I would foresee that having an opportunity to design the lab anew would make things more efficient, and having, newer, better equipment and an opportunity again to design it to meet our current needs would make things more efficient and probably increase our capacity. One thing we do worry about a bit is if our customer base grew much more, we would have a struggle in the current facility. I can't speak to all the code compliance issues that Chris is familiar with, but while we've upgraded some of our equipment, it is kind of old, and it's, that lab was put in when the building was built, 40 years ago. And so if we were starting again, there are things we would do differently.
So when you use the word capacity, I interpret that to mean the same number of staff could do more water quality tests around the county because the process is going to work better on the testing end of the things.
I would think so. What's happened is over the years, the methods that we use have changed, and the number of samples we process has increased. So we run about 10,000 samples a year through that facility, and it handles that okay, but there are times when we have there's kind of seasonal variations on samples, and so when we have a really busy week, it can be a scramble. So I'm hoping that with the redesign of the lab, that would be something that we could, again, figure out a little bit better how to do stuff. Again, it's from my perspective, it's kind of the way it's been since I've been here, and that, as you know, that's been a long time. And I think this would be an opportunity to lay things out a little bit better. We have between the consultant that is being brought on and some of our staff, they've got some experience doing some things, and so I think this will be a good opportunity for that.
Not going to ask you how many years that is, Art.
39.
Okay, you've been a volunteer. So I'm imagining in 39 years, there's probably been some advances in water quality testing.
Yeah, no, we've got much better
Processes.
methods, and we've actually added some capacity. We do some different tests that we didn't do years ago. But yeah, when that lab started, actually, and yeah, the methodology is much better. It's more efficient. It provides better results for our customers and for our staff. So I think we've made improvements. We're trying to keep up.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir. Do you have an additional question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I guess my question would be, if we don't leave from this location, say due to lack of funding, the economy, whatever, would this review also include maybe what would be needed to expand it to make it more user-friendly if we kept it right where it's at, but maybe did a revamp in the interior, or maybe moved a wall or something like that?
Sue, go ahead.
The scope of work, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, is to relocate the lab to Lily Road. That is the scope of work. If the board wants to, add a scope of work to see what else we can do here, as you heard last week, physically, there is no room to expand. And that was one of the questions the board asked last week. So I think it will be a fruitless exercise for a consultant to go through the process to see where they can expand at this current facility where it's not space.
I agree. I think you're right. And that's why I think this might be premature. So that's just my concern. Thank you. That's good enough, man.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Art. With that, we'll move on to Public Health and Social Services. Item 5A, approval of interagency agreement between Thurston County, Washington, and the Washington State Department of Commerce through Rights of Way initiative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The board has been briefed. It's a very fast-paced series of events. The Department of Commerce has engaged Thurston County as well as the regional partners, the cities of Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater. And this is related to, as part of the 2001 legislative session, they passed a Senate Bill 5662, which they set aside money to address the inconvenience within the public's right-of-way along the state's highways. Through so many different conversations, this Department of Commerce wants to partner with the county to receive money, in this case it's for $5 million, to address two main sites. I believe one is in Pacific, the other was in Lily Road, where we can probably work with a provider to set aside 24 shelter beds. In this particular items to receive the money, you will review the agenda item for following week, where you will see how the money will be distributed to. So again, this is just the first step. There's so many different funding sources that are coming through this legislative activity, and this is the first for your consideration. And Keely is here to elaborate more, so Keely.
Keely, anything you'd like to add?
That was a great summary. This is just the beginning of what we hope to be a series of steps towards addressing the governor's urgency and having folks that are living on the right-of-ways relocated. So this is, I imagine, the first in a number of conversations we will be having about these efforts, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Munster, questions?
So the 24 shelter beds, is that like the state's guesstimation as to how many folks will not be able to be relocated somewhere else or find housing? Is that what that's about, and trying to plug the hole? Or what is the concept of the 24 shelter beds in the greater scheme?
So the 24 shelter beds are actually what we can offer immediately. So the number of beds being offered are not adequate to meet the need of the number of people living in the encampments. It's just the first step in hopefully addressing the need that we have for folks to move out of those right-of-ways and into some kind of sheltering or housing. So those were just Interfaith Works stated that is how many beds they would be able to set aside specifically for right-of-way residents.
So this money is not about constructing or trying to cobble together new beds. It's just the operation of existing beds that we have that would be then set aside for these folks?
Correct.
Okay,
That's something.
got it. Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
I understand this is pass-through dollars, so it isn't gonna affect our budget directly with this amount. But I'm wondering, Keely, is there a plan in place to prioritize who may get or not get assistance?
Yeah, so the plan is to kind of go strategically camp by camp. And so within that timeline, there will also be outreach workers going out into the encampments, ensuring that they are offered coordinated entry to get them into a particular priority list to ensure that we're not side dooring the coordinated entry system, and that we are ensuring that there is some type of prioritization process based on vulnerability and location where those individuals are currently residing into those shelter beds. And
Go ahead.
Of course, each individual has the ability to decline the invitation to stay in the shelter.
Sure. Do we have a criteria of the list that is going to come into play here as we make those decisions?
Criteria. Oh, I'm sorry.
About, well, one of my big things is residency. I want to figure out a way to make sure that we are prioritizing our homegrown folks that have fallen on hard times versus encouraging people to come from New York City because we're benevolent. So that's kind of where I'm at. And so I'm wondering if you have a criteria laid out.
First of all, New York has much fewer unsheltered people living on the streets because they have a completely different shelter system. Second of all, this is coming down from the governor. And so the governor has stated unequivocally that the individuals that are living in the right of way, regardless of where they came from, will be removed. And in good faith is asking and offering funds for 5 different counties to establish strategies for getting them, offering them a shelter, a sanctioned encampment, a tiny home, or permanent supportive housing or permanent housing. So,
okay, I guess, but that still doesn't answer my question, because I'm wondering if women with children, for an example, might get a little higher on the list, or disabled veterans might get a little higher on the list, or residents that have fallen on hard times might get a little higher on the list. I'm trying to get get an understanding of what the criteria on the list might be. If amputees maybe are on the top of the list, I don't know. I would like to look at something. I mean, we're spending, in the next 10 years, the Home Fund is going to raise about $50 million to address this issue. And I think that we need a plan that not only we as commissioners can look at, but the citizenry can review and see if they agree that it's good government. That's all. I'm looking for a list of criteria.
Absolutely. Our community is pretty advanced in that conversation. They have created a new assessment tool called the Housing Equity Assessment Tool. That is what is being used to assess individuals living anywhere for priority placement. So I'm happy to share that tool with you if you'd like to see it. There's one that's specifically for families and one that's specifically for single adults. So that for coordinated entry, we are prioritizing according to vulnerability as per required by the federal government and state government.
Okay, maybe that'll just be a bit of a self-education for myself then, so
Sure.
I'll have a better understanding. Thank you.
And I don't have any questions, Keely. You reported this at the RHC last week, so I'm pretty updated. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, moving on to our next item, 2022 housing contract renewals with Community Action Council of Lewis, Mason, and Thurston counties, and a contract was sent out. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review it. County Manager?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This item is related to the request for proposals the county issued back in 2021. And during that process, the county awarded the Community Action Council of Lewis, Mason, and Thurston counties for consolidated homeless grants, also the housing essential needs. That contract was awarded for 1 year with the option to extend it for a second year. This particular item for you is to consider awarding the contract to Community Action Council for the next year, the second year, which right now is scheduled to elapse, I believe, by the end of June. I don't want to go back to the background as to why we got here with the Community Action Council, but this particular contract includes additional conditions. And this condition, the additional conditions have shared with the board last week. I received a couple of comments from Commissioner Airworks related to put a little more timelines on a couple of items. We will address that absolutely. And last week, when you reviewed this item, you wanted to have Mary Hall, the county auditor, join us. I don't know if is right here, to see if she was in concurrence with additional conditions. And also, I would like to hear from the board if you have any questions related to the additional conditions before you may consider awarding this the second year of this contract. That's all I have as an introduction.
Thank you. And thank you, Auditor Hall, for joining us today. We'll start with questions. Commissioner Edwards, do you have any?
My questions were submitted back to the county manager, and they did have to do with the timelines allowed, because many of those, I don't know if you want to call them supplemental conditions, I guess is how we're referring to them, I think were in place even before. It was the timelines of receiving the information that was my concern. I'd hate to run up against what we ran up against earlier this year. And so I'm kind of looking forward to hear from Mary Hall and just on the timeline issue, how are we going to address that? But that's where I'm at, man.
Auditor Hall? Yes, go ahead.
The reason that we highlighted some of the language was really just to manage expectations. I think in the, previous experience we had, I think they were a little surprised by us coming in and doing the auditing that we do. So what we wanted to do was just pull out, already existing laws and rules and just highlight them, which I think we did well. And, Brandon has been working with the CAC staff the last couple weeks, and it's actually going really well. They've been very cooperative. So hopefully that won't happen in the future, because in the contract, it does say that they need to participate in contract monitoring. And of course, there's a breach of contract clause in every contract we do, but I really expect that we're going to have a much better relationship moving forward.
I guess as a follow-up to that, what are we gonna do about the timelines? Are we just gonna accept it as
So,
they're gonna do the right thing?
Let me address that on item number 2, which is cost reimbursement invoicing. It includes, as far as all invoices must contain documentation demonstrating the payment has been issued. That includes copies of checks written and evidence that the checks have been mailed. You asked the question to put a time limit on that. That comment may not necessarily apply because this is a requirement of documentation when they submit an invoice. So putting a timeline is not necessarily applicable. However, on your comment on item number 4, absence of records and personnel, putting a timeline I think is appropriate. Tighten up the language a little bit, meaning the contractor agrees to provide access to all records and personnel directly related to this agreement, and we can probably add within 48-hour notice. And I think that probably will help that. So did I address
That, yes, sir. That's what I was concerned about.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of need to get a nod from Mary Hall because she's the one that has to manage this stuff as much as anybody, you know, keep track. So you think you're okay with this, Mary?
I think we're okay, and I'm going to be scheduling a meeting with Thurston also to just talk through, you know, our role, their role. I mean, we're partners in this, and we all have the same goal. So I think it's really just about improving communication and ensuring that they comply. Because, like I said, we just pulled out and highlighted parts of the contract because these contracts are pretty long. So we just wanted to pull out the important points, like having access to records and, you know, participating in the monitoring. I mean, like we do with the state auditor's office, we probably have a dozen auditors in my finance department right now because they're doing our audit. So, and it's a back and forth thing. So I think it's just, you know, managing expectations, but I feel a lot better about things, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mercer, questions?
Yeah, so I was okay with 2 to 6 because that looked like the kind of meat of the new requirements. My question is on item 1. Why does that have to be there? What's the point? Especially when we're just, as Auditor Hall said, just pulling out already existing rules and highlighting them. Why do we need to call this out? You know, I don't understand it. We should have the ability, as a contracting party, we should have always the ability to negotiate terms with our other party. So I just feel like unless there's some legal requirement, one should just come out.
Is that the definition of a high risk?
Yeah.
And we, through the process, we have considered the CAC as a high risk. And
Well, okay, you've considered them that, but why do we have to call it out in this contract amendment?
because that is how the high risk is defined.
But why do we have to define that? It seems like name calling. It seems like getting into the same communication problem that started this whole mess. And I would question which one of if we're gonna do that, I would question which one of these 4 items are even satisfied, but I don't think any of that needs to be in here. Just remove paragraph 1 and the bolded thing and just say appendix C, additional contract requirements. 2 becomes 1 and you move on. I don't understand why we would have to designate them as high risk even though we've made that internal assessment.
So we are required under federal law to put the risk assessment in the contract. So even if we don't call it out on this attachment, we will call it out in the contract because that's a requirement on us.
Okay, I'd like
by
to,
the
I'd like to
feds.
see that legal authority, and I would like to know which of these 4 categories is gonna be identified as having been failed.
So if I may, because I don't have a copy of that, thank you. They have, if we think about our experience with the last contract, number one, our prior experience with the same or similar awards, they will have failed cooperation here. The results of previous audits.
What previous audit?
The subrecipient monitoring, if you think of that as an audit.
I thought that was one of the points of contention, whether that's an audit or not an audit.
Well, if
And I didn't know
you,
we completed an audit. Mary keeps saying she'd like to do an audit.
a more.
Well, the words are interchangeable.
Yes. In the rules that we've received from the Department of Commerce, it says that we may use different words, but they all really mean the same thing. The subrecipient does have new personnel in place, and there were cases of payments that we found that were fraudulent.
And we have recovered some of those payments,
We have
alright?
recovered some, we've not yet recovered all, but they have failed almost all 4 of those. And we would be remiss if we do not term them high risk. And regardless of the level of risk, high, medium, or low, we have to state in a contract that is using federal money what the risk level is.
But you're saying there's another place in the contract where that's
There
designated.
is another place
So
in
why
the
don't we just
contract
leave it to
that
that and take it out of here?
we certainly could do that. We were asked to add
I
this.
don't, I'd
We
like
could
to,
take it back out.
Yeah, I'm not in support of that. I'm in agreement with it staying as is, but again, I'm not sure how Commissioner Edwards feels about
I
that.
am with you, Madam Chair.
All of this language is in CFR 200.
To me,
I think it's
Madam
important to note too that we have either recovered or prevented over $50,000 in fraudulent payments. So
Far.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
I have to say, I questioned whether or not I would support giving these new contracts out, to be honest with you, looking back on what took place over the last 6 months. So I realize it's a little bit of tough love, but I really feel we need to put it right out on Front Street, what we expect, and not have it in some other area. I mean, I'm with Robin 100% on her explanation.
So with no other questions, Madam Chair, if I may, this item will remain, says.
Okay. Yeah, I'm supporting moving forward with this contract just because of the cooperation that CAC has had with the county and with Auditor Hall specifically. But I feel we still need, there's still a high risk subrecipient organization. So I think we need to have those protections in place. And, again, as we move forward and, the relationship gets better, then, and depending on what their future assessment is, then, we can start. But right now, just we need those. I think we need as much protection in place as possible. And I reviewed the proposed contract language, and I didn't find anything really out of the ordinary. But
can I add something?
Go ahead, Auditor Hall.
I think it's important to note that Thurston County has been in a high-risk category with the state auditor's office. In fact, we were when I was elected in 2013. So really all it means is there's a little extra auditing that happens. We hold hands a little more. And then you know, eventually you come out of it as long as, you know, the partnership's good and they're complying with our, you know, recommendations to prevent and notify us also of any existing fraud. So, yeah. I think, you know, there has been new leadership there, but I think it's just developing that relationship.
I just want to make the point that the protections are there. The label is more inflammatory than really it probably means, just as you pointed out. So I think it would be smart as we try to rebuild the relationship to minimize the name calling and labeling, maximize the protections that the county needs to make sure, and that's what paragraphs 2 through 6 are about. But I understand I'm outvoted on this question, so I will.
Well, it's really, that is CFR 200, we are required to do a risk assessment, as Robin mentioned. So
I'm just talking about the inclusion in this document under paragraph 1 and the bolded title of the appendix.
If there are not any further questions, okay. 1 second, I'm having some issues here.
Maybe a way to move forward on this item, the bolded question title that Commissioner Messer stated, maybe we can just change the title, say high risk unbolded, underline, per CFR 200-332B, just leave its title and such.
Right, we could certainly think of a title, somewhat of a title change. The point being, though, that we are not going to be using this attachment for other contractors that are not considered high risk.
Okay. I apologize, my agenda online just kind of blurred out, so I'm gonna try to read the next item.
I can help you if you like.
And then, so it's item C, and it's the rent assistance contracts for live stories and community youth services.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Last week you approved an item to receive just about over $7 million from the Department of Commerce to continue to provide rental assistance. And this particular item is for you to authorize increase the cost of life stories by $6,335,292, and to the community youth service for $800,000 within the conditions of the Commerce grant. There is a requirement to have at least 10% to be assigned to household that serve youth, adults aged 18 to 24. And this is important, as you heard from Tom last week, we'll be suspending receiving new applications tomorrow. And with this funding, if the board approves it, that will allow us to process all the current applications that we have in the queue right now. So this really fulfills the applications that we have received so far. And starting tomorrow, we will not be able to receive any new applications because we have exhausted all the funding. And Tom is here to elaborate a bit more on this request.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have anything to add. That was a good summary from the commissioner. I will say that both Jamie and Megan emailed me that.
That was the county manager.
And kind of the article from the Olympian that you referenced earlier this morning, Commissioner Menser, and I gave that a quick read. I would characterize that as largely accurate. I understand the negative tone. I certainly appreciate that folks are frustrated that funds and applications are not being processed faster, and we're just moving as fast as we can.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Okay, Commissioner Messer, any questions for this item?
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, I think we're okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next is item 6 from Superior Court, 6A, approval of interlocal agreement for Thurston County Superior Court and Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Administrative Service Organization.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. For your consideration is to authorize an interlocal agreement with the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Administrative Services Office of Thurston County in Thurston County Superior Court with the contract between January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022 to receive $220,000 for judicial services provided by Thurston County Superior Court for those individuals that are involuntarily detained due to mental health disorders. And that's really the gist of that, this item. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. But I believe Commissioner Messer and Commissioner Edwards, as part of the VHO, may be tracking on this item as well.
Questions? Commissioner Menser?
No.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, I think we've got it. Thank you.
Thank you. And then our last item, it's the 2022 budget amendment number 1.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. We gave you a heads up last week that this item will be coming for your consideration today. And I will not elaborate too much on the budget amendment number 1. There has been many conversations with the board in which the board exercised a discussion on a line item by line item in each of the items included on the budget amendment number 1. This is for your consideration to approve the budget amendment based on the decisions that you made previously. Robin?
I'm sorry, this is for budget amendment number 1. As the board reviewed by in many work sessions, this amendment is for a broad range of items, many of them technical, the vast majority of them technical, and a few unanticipated items that we could not have expected at the time that the budget was passed. All of the items fit within the criteria that the board set for a budget amendment. And the board approved the list of amendments on, do you remember what date that was? I think it was like May 19th. But it was some time ago. Once the board approved the specific items, we published the amounts in the papers for the last 2 weeks, and it is before you today for your approval. And at this point, no changes may be made. If there's anything in this amendment that the board does not agree to, we would need to pull the entire amendment and run it again. So I'd be happy to answer any specific questions about it.
Questions? Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, I'm wondering, we're talking about Amendment 1 and then attachments A, B, C, and D. Is it possible to give a title to A, B, C, and D so we have, or so we as commissioners, or me as a commissioner, will have a better understanding of A, B, C, and D, and the public would have somewhat of an understanding other than just the label A, B, C, or D? So is that possible that we could, you know, this is about wages, this is about tires for police cars, I don't know, you know, I don't really remember what it all is now, and the public, good chance they're interested as well.
So each of the amendments is not about a specific line item in the budget.
Isn't it a group of line items?
Well, let's see. Attachment A is the detailed amount by department, by fund, that adjusts the appropriation amount.
And it's something to do with credit cards or something, is that part of it?
No.
No, okay.
Attachment B is a list of the line items that the board approved. So all of the various line items that the board approved. including credit card, funding for the sheriff, the various grants, all the things, rollover money for various projects that were started but not finished. Attachment C is changes to position control, and attachment D is the updated equipment list. So we could certainly put the titles of each of the attachment on the resolution.
I think for clarity, it kind of, rather than just A, B, C, and D.
We can do that.
I think it makes for a better understanding by those that maybe don't have a good understanding of it. And will there be these physical documents attached as we move forward with this today?
They are already attached and available. They have been,
It's online.
Yes, sir.
yes,
Okay, so,
and these have been available for the last 2 weeks.
and you advertised these issues in the paper as well,
In
right?
paper and online.
Yep. Okay, if there could be a 3-word explanation or something for A, B, C, and D, I think
We'll
could
try
be
to get their titles in here. They still won't give the public an indication of the various things that the board is authorizing.
I personally just question whenever something says A, B, C, D, without anything, what A, B, C, D.
Happy to put the titles.
Okay? Is that all? I don't know where my seatmates are at on that issue, but I'm just trying to go for clarification.
It's good with Robin, it's good with me.
I'm fine with it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Menzer, questions?
No, ma'am.
I don't have questions on this. The next, commissioners will report on board work sessions and assigned committee meetings, providing updates on actions taken as well as upcoming issues. Item C, the county manager will review the Board of County Commissioners schedule for the week of June 14th, and we will adjourn the meeting. We will be picking up with the Board of Health at 3:30 or shortly thereafter. Next on our agenda is the review of the Board of Health agenda and for June 14th, and I will pass this to the chair.
Okay, so with the baton in my hand, I'm gonna call for a break. We'll be back at 10:45.
Thank you.
You're live, Commissioner.
Okay, we're back. It's 10:48 a.m. on Tuesday, June 14th, 2022, and we're picking up with the Board of Health meeting agenda for this afternoon. We'll call the meeting to order at 3:30. We will have approval of the agenda and meeting minutes from the May 10th, 2022 meeting. We will have 2 items under proclamations and presentations, the first being proclamation for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Awareness Month. I don't see Kurt. Is he not going to be here for this?
I think my apologies because by mistake I ended the Zoom meeting.
Okay.
So he's just waiting to.
Okay, so if
he's
he pops
listening
back.
before we can.
All right, so Clerk of the Board of Health, Jamie, we have, you said, a contact.
Keith Meyer with Veterans Court.
Keith Meyer, Veterans Court, not the County Manager, Emilio Chavez.
Yeah, he will present the item with more details and some feedback.
And I assume the ordinance or the proclamation itself is not in our packet, but it is with, oh, I see, in our, okay, got it. All right, so we do have this in the packet to the board members. Okay, so we have Veterans Court presenter, and any questions on that, commissioners? Commissioner Mejia?
And she got some Wi-Fi issues.
Okay, just pop in Commissioner Mejia if you get back and have a question. Commissioner Edwards, anything on that?
No questions.
Okay, Dr. Abdulmalik then will present on the Thurston County Health Officer Provider Outreach and Engagement Activities. I know we had a medical provider summit. I think that'll be the focus of her presentation. And any questions regarding that? Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
No.
Okay. Then we'll have the opportunity for the public to address the Board of Health, 4 minutes per citizen. And then the department item for this meeting is the 2022 Thurston County Health Rankings, which is an annual result that we get and usually like to discuss and go through in some detail. Marianne O'Garo will be presenting that from Public Health and Social Services.
She's online.
She's online. Marianne, anything you'd want to add as a preview to what you are going to talk about this afternoon?
Thank you for having this again on your agenda. We will be sharing with you where you stand, which is good news in the sense of Thurston County is still in the top 10. There is some areas and opportunities for improvement, and so we'll be sharing with you some of the good news and some areas for some consideration. And other than that, I think I'd leave it. But thank you very much.
Questions for Marianne, Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir. Thank you.
No questions, thank you.
Okay, then we will have reporting on board health members related activities, the health officer's full report and interim director Harden's report. And it should be a fairly compact meeting today because we do have a public hearing, and I'll pass back to Chair Board of County Commissioners, Commissioner Mejia, to go through that.
That is a Board of Health public hearing.
Oh, it's a Board of Health public hearing. Okay, great. Sorry, forgot about that. It's not on this Board of Health agenda. It is. Sorry. Okay, so we will have at 4:30?
Yep.
Okay, so the scheduling today will be 2 o'clock Board of County Commissioners. I'm optimistic we might wrap that by 3:30 for an on-time start to the Board of Health. Commissioner Edwards will be excused if necessary for a good chunk of that, but then we'll probably all reconvene at 4:30. And I'm hoping that will also start on time for the public hearing for ordinance to amend Article 1 of Thurston County Sanitary Code. Art Starry is here. He will be present, I imagine, at 4:30 to give an overview of the item. Art, anything you need to say? I know we've gone through this a couple times, I think.
Well, there's nothing new to add. I've gone over it and Kirk did a good job reviewing it with you last week. We've not received any public comments, but I will do a quick overview of this and then I guess ask if this is something that you'd like to approve.
And we could potentially take action on this at the end of the public hearing.
For your consideration, one is 2 actions. One is to close the public hearing, and depending on the public testimony, at your convenience, you have the option to approve the ordinance after the public testimony. That's always an option for the board.
Okay, Commissioner Edwards, any questions on that? Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir.
Okay, and that wraps up the rest of our schedule for today. Pass it back to you for the next
Okay,
item.
thank you. I'll be seeing you this afternoon.
Thanks, Art.
Thank you. Okay. We'll be reviewing our Tuesday, June 21st, 2022 agenda. We'll call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. at 2:05. We'll be doing a presentation. We have a pledge of allegiance to be led by Commissioner Edwards, approval of the Tuesday, June 21st, 2022 agenda, and then approval of the board meeting minutes from June 14th, 2022. The presentation for that day is Thurston, there's a typo there, Thurston County 4-H Youth Market Animal Cell Presentation.
Yeah, it's not Thurston Country, it's Thurston County. Thank you. We'll address that. You will have the opportunity to hear from members of the Youth Market 4-H, a presentation of the upcoming Youth Market Animal Sale. So myself looking forward to hear the presentations, and I assume the board members will also looking forward to hear from the kids.
Questions, comments, Commissioner Edwards?
Who's actually gonna be heading this up? Do we know somebody from the fair? Or do we know the answer to that?
Commissioner Edwards, if I may, this was actually a request that came over from both Commissioner Mejia as well as Commissioner Mentzer's aide, and it's going to be the actual 4-H youth members that are going to be giving the presentation themselves.
Oh, okay, thank you.
My office got an email asking from one of the youth members requesting a meeting, and so I sent it to Jamie because that would be interesting just to get their perspective on it.
Thank you.
Sounds good, thank you.
And okay, next is an opportunity for the public to address the board and county manager's update.
Yeah, I will follow up within the items that need to follow up based on the public testimony. And I will provide an update on the fireworks resolution as well.
Questions?
No, no question.
Okay, next is consent items. Consent item 3A from the Sheriff's Office is increase to existing change fund.
Yeah, for your consideration, Madam Chair, is for you to authorize the increase of the change fund in the Sheriff's Office by $200 for a total of $600. And this is really allows a little more flexibility. And this is in relation to the anticipation of the Treasurer's Office moving to 3000 Pacific. And again, that's more flexibility for the Sheriff's Office, and the Sheriff Bright is here to answer any questions.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer, we'll start with you.
No, ma'am.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. No questions from me either. Okay, moving on, that was the only consent item on our agenda. To department items, item 4A from the Auditor's Office, approval of the voucher list.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, for your consideration. This is approval of the voucher list for the week of May 30, 2022 for a combined amount of $5,151,808.58. On page 76, there is items related to the 3000 Pacific for a total amount of $1,270,153.16.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Menzer?
No.
Okay. Next, Central Services, contract award for Atrium furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
This is, Madam Chair, this is the next step in the process. Back in March 1st, 2022, the majority of the board authorized Central Services to go ahead and solicit bids for furniture, fixtures, and equipment to outfit the 3000 Pacific building. We received 2 bids related to this particular process, and for your consideration is to award the contract to Gordon Productions Incorporated, also known as Created Office, for $2,025,558 for all the furniture, Atrium, for the furniture at the Atrium, fixtures, equipment, as well as all the electrical needs that needs to be part of the furniture. This particular item, as you may recall, is part of the authorization by the board to use real estate excise tax 1 meets within the context of the amount the board authorized for this purchase. This is a, as you may recall, this is, and as you may read, this has an amount up to $2,025,558. And the reason is up to because we included on the bid proposal an incentive. The incentive is to see if they can, the furniture provider can meet the expected deadlines that we have scheduled. This particular proposal includes a target to deliver all the furniture installation at the in phases, but the last phase is completed at the end of September, maybe September 25th. If they meet that particular deadlines, then they will be awarded $150,000 in incentives, and that is what is up to. If for any particular reason this contractor is unable to meet the deadlines, that incentive will not materialize. That is why you have before you on the action up to, this includes that particular incentive. Questions?
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes. The incentive pay, is that going to be a problem with REIT 1? Is the same funding going to pay?
It's not unusual for us to have incentives in any contract.
Okay.
We exercise that option in many public works contracts, and this is one of them.
And did I hear you say we got 2 bids? And one of them is this Gordon Products?
Yeah, it's the lower bid.
And will, at some point, we be able to see that contract if this goes forward? As far as the items.
The contract is attached.
Is it already attached on here?
It's attached online.
Okay, good enough.
So it's available.
I'm just making sure, but I do believe it's out there.
Let me pull that up as well.
I am pulling it up right now. Yes, the contract is attached.
Thank you. Thank you. That's it for me.
Commissioner Menzer, questions?
No, County Manager covered my questions.
Okay. And then where is Gordon Products Inc. from?
It is a local providers, their headquarters here in Olympia. And their office is downtown Olympia, but nearby downtown.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item. Item 6A from the Commissioner's Office. It's a bond resolution for acquisition and remodeling of various county buildings.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And this is related to really years of conversation related to the Plan B of what if the new courthouse didn't go through the budget process. As you know, that didn't go through, so we embark on this Plan B, which included finding a lease facility. In this case, it's 3000 Pacific, and also the remodel of the courthouse campus as we know it. As the board may recall, the conversation of the bond as to how we need to fund the improvements and remodel of the courthouse campus has been for at least, from my recollection, at least 3 years in the making. Was included in 2021 as funding strategy, is included in 2022 funding strategy, is finally we're getting to the point of exercising this option for the board to consider. So it has been a lot of conversation related to the bond option to be used for the remodel because we really don't have anything cash available. The funding source, as we have discussed with the board, where the money will come from to pay this bond is the real estate excise tax 1 Robin has provided you in many occasions the status of the REIT 1 and how that can be a good alternative to fund the issuance of this bond. And with Robin's perspective as of late, we still have capacity in the real estate excise tax 1 without depleting the fund in order to meet this particular bond. So I just want to lay that out, and I'm sure Robin has additional, more technical information related to this particular action for your consideration.
Just on the technical side, this resolution authorizes either me or the county treasurer to authorize the issuance and agree to the terms of the issuance of bonds. We do it this way. This is a routine delegation of authority, and we do it this way because when it comes time to actually do the bond issue, which is currently projected for August, it's run like almost like an auction. And if you didn't delegate this authority, then immediately following the option, we would need to come to the board to take action within 2 hours to approve the terms, rates, and other conditions of the bonds. And this way, either Jeff or I are able to approve those terms. We set very specific limitations in this resolution. As you see, the amount is not to exceed 52 million. It's 52 instead of 50 because Duncan Brown anticipates that we will probably see types of discounts that will bring it back down to 50 million. But the face price apparently will be 52. It sets a cap of interest at no more than 5%. It sets the term at no more than 25 years. And then it has all the technical information that is legally required. And then Duncan and Nancy Neris will attend the agenda setting next Tuesday to give you a brief presentation about the state of the general debt in the county and what this bond will result in for us, and to be available to answer any of your questions at that time.
Yeah, and so next week's agenda setting, it will be the only item, so it will be enough time for the bond counsel to provide that information as well as for the board to answer any particular questions. We did ask the bond counsel to address one specific question. The difference between this type of bond and the other regular bond that goes to the vote of the public, to the voters. It's two different bonds. This is legislative action, which is allowed by law. And also that will be part of their presentation, distinguishing the two types of bonds. I think what you see, the bonds, they go for a vote is mainly related to construction bonds used by the school districts. This is different. And the bond counsel will address the distinction between the two next Tuesday morning. And any other questions the board may have.
Okay, any additional questions or comments?
Yes.
Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
Do we know the last time that the public approved a bond, maybe of the type you're talking about for construction in Thurston County? The public had a vote on something like this?
Not to my recollection.
Certainly ask if anyone's got a record of that, but at least in the last, I'd say 20 to 30 years that I'm aware of, no. And we have issued substantial bonds in
Right.
that time.
I guess being I'm the older guy here, I think it goes all the way back into the early 70s that And that had to do with moving to this location from
I
downtown.
don't know.
So I guess my concern is that, yes, we can do a legislative via, I don't know what the proper term is, action, anyway, to do this, and we've done it. The county has done it before. I think all of the jail, the last time I think something was on the ballot, it was actually voted down by the public, and that was in early 2000s, somewhere in there. And then the county made a decision to do a councilmatic. I guess that's what this is called, councilmatic.
Yeah, it's a councilmatic act.
To move forward, and at that time, we bought that property over in Tumwater. We ended up at the 34, we bought the 3400 building, I think, about that same time frame. Built the juvenile facility on that property, and then built a jail on that property. And that was all done through this type of a bond, if I remember right.
Yes. Yes, it were these types of bonds.
And for me, I'm wondering what fund paid back that activity? And I don't think we've paid it off yet, but what fund is paying that activity back?
So the bulk of the jail and the FJC bonds has been paid from the
Detention. So
detention sales tax fund. The Tilly bonds are being paid from the road fund. The bonds that paid for the EOC were mainly grant, reimbursed through a grant process, and then the excess is being paid out of general fund. Let's see, those are the big bonds that were issued in the last 15 years. And that's one of the things that Nancy and Duncan will review, is they give you a schedule of all of the bonds, the recent bonds issued by Thurston County and the status of them.
So they'll give us the
Refinanced
debt load
quite a
we're
few.
carrying and that type of thing.
They will have all of that information.
Have we ever used funding to pay some of these bonds?
Absolutely, we have,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. My concern is that the last time an issue went in front of the voters, we didn't have a very good, the county, let's just say the county didn't have a very good plan at that point in time, and the voters turned that down. My concern is that if we take this action as a councilmatic action with no vote of the public, we're going to erode trust in government. And where I'm going with this is the 5 commissioner issue coming up possibly, and I see we're going to discuss that maybe today a little bit. We're going to be going to the voters and ask them to do something, which the law allows, and that is create 5 positions instead of having the 3. And the Port of Olympia is going along with, is doing this with us. Actually, I gave my first presentation on that topic on the 5 commissioners last week in front of a Lacey Rotary, and I think it went very well. Anyway, my concern is we're gonna have a hard time selling the 5 positions, I believe, just because the public looks at it a little differently than we do. I don't think this is the time to move forward with a councilmatic bond for, let's say, the $50 million, because we've not been successful in the past of handling that properly, in my estimation. And we ended up attempting to move over to where the juvenile facility is. And the court ruled against that the courthouse couldn't go there, that we could have satellite offices though. We ended up buying a fish plant. We never did use the fish plant. We ended up building a jail that we didn't use for years because we didn't have a plan. I just don't see this as a good enough plan involving the public to develop public trust. And due to that, I think we're jeopardizing even our 5-member commission by doing this without coming up with a good plan, selling it to our public as to the need, and having them vote to expend dollars to meet that need. So because of that, I'm concerned that we might be jeopardizing our 5-position commission if we take this action. So I mean, that's, you know, obviously I've had some concerns all along about this, but I think because we're coming up on that issue, and I guess we're gonna have more discussion on the 5 positions later today. Is that right? Okay, so that'll be my main concern about taking this action next week. I'll just let it go at that for if there's any other discussion, but I think things are tied together here a little bit. And we might be shooting ourselves in the foot, so to speak. So that's it for me now.
Okay. Thank you. Any additional questions, comments before we move on?
Commissioner Messer, questions?
I don't have questions. The details were laid out. This is consistent, exactly consistent with the plan that we voted on a year ago. So I know Commissioner Edwards and I often talk to different constituents. Folks I talk to are very grateful that we're meeting the space needs of the county without a tax increase. So I'm hearing nothing but relief, and from folks that might have been a little apprehensive about a new courthouse and a tax increase to support that. This gets us where we need to go in the short and medium term with no tax increase. So I think that's being very responsive to the public's concerns and being responsible. And like we said, these bonds are a way we do business. We just did one for a large one for large IT systems. We've done one for that. That's one. I think we've done 2 in the time I've been on the board. It's the way the county meets its needs through, you know, through the financial tools and resources that it's been given through law. So that's what we're doing. And when we have to ask for additional tools and resources, that's when we have to go to the voters and ask for their approval for that. But I feel comfortable using the tools and resources that the law gives us, because they are quite limited with the 1% levy lift, and we only get a little stripe of, you know, tax revenue on sales tax and this, that, and the other. And we have big obligations: public safety, a criminal justice system to run, a growing county that's more than double in size from when these buildings were constructed. And we're trying to do our best to meet all of these needs. And I think this plan makes a lot of sense, so I'm comfortable with this.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
could I follow up on that, please?
Go ahead.
I didn't mention how bad I think the economy is gonna turn. I think we are already in a recession. I think that because of inflation, look at the price of gas. This community is gonna be paying $7 gas pretty quick. And I just don't think this is the time. I think we may go into a depression. And I just don't think this is the right time for us to be creating this debt load on the taxpayers without a vote of the public on the issue. So I'll get into this more next week. Thank you.
Thank you. And so there will be a presentation on the bond resolution next week. Robin from And-
Tuesday morning, Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner, and also I failed to mention that this resolution was reviewed by the Finance Committee yesterday. Yeah, just yesterday. And the Finance Committee passed a motion recommending that the board move forward with the issuance of the bonds.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Could I ask Robin something here?
Go ahead.
Who does the finance committee consist of?
The Finance Committee is the Treasurer, Jeff Gadman, the Auditor, Mary Hall, and County Commissioner Mejia, the Chair of the Board.
I was not there yesterday, so I was not, I did not participate in this vote, but just a FYI.
So there's 3 folks on that as listed, and that's it?
Yes.
For some reason, I thought the county manager was on there.
That is the Financial Management Committee, not to be confused with the Finance Committee. Yes.
Okay.
So
The
yesterday,
finance committee is external, is strategic. The finance management committee is more internal policies and process.
the Finance Committee deals with debt, specifically debt and investments.
Investments. And I think
Of
you
the
have
county money.
covered and the finance committee when the chair is not available, if I may recall, yeah.
Probably have.
So it's.
I probably have, and I have mixed up things in the past.
So,
Right.
yeah, it's a good question, the finance committee versus the finance
Okay.
management committee, which is more.
And who's on that
internal.
one?
And that one is the county treasurer, the county auditor, and the county manager.
Okay, so
Right.
I think he's excused from being on that one.
Right,
So, okay, but so the team, the
the Treasurer and the Auditor specifically
decided to
voted to,
vote and make a recommendation.
yes, they did,
And,
which is part of the county's debt policy.
okay, good enough. Thank you, just wanted to clarify that.
If there are no further comments or questions on this item, we'll move on to Public Health and Social Services, item 7A. Professional services contract between Thurston County and Thurston County Food Bank.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a follow-up to the planning session conversation related to the supply chain of baby formula. And the board decided, provided direction to bring an item for you to take an action to approve $130,000. Which is the $100,000 will be to help the community in infant formula, and $100,000 and $3,000 for the diapers for the families in need in Thurston County. This contract is funded by the ARPA funds, as you may recall, and this particular contract is with the Thurston County Food Bank. And the action for you is to waive the competitive bidding process because time is of the essence, if I may. And also, this is related to the previous comment that Robin made related to the current emergency declaration, which allows us to do this in this case. This is the expedited step that we have taken based on the board's direction, and I'd recommend the board approve this.
Question, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, when we had talked about this, I supported this move, but my concern was that we figure out some way to limit the black market from getting a hold here on, and I'm wondering if we came up with anything yet that is criteria or guide to try and prevent that type of thing from happening. There's been other instances where, like, baby formula has been put on the different auction sites or sale sites on the internet at a very extremely inflated price. And have we got anything in place so that we can help our citizens in need and prevent abuse from taking place? Have we come up with a plan on that issue? Are we there?
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Commissioner Edwards, for that concern. And that definitely was something that I was thinking about as well. I put into the contract that the food bank would allow up to 3 cans of formula per child per week. Just in an attempt, we didn't want to limit it so much that families weren't getting what they needed, but we didn't want to leave it totally open so that people took more and, you know, we were at risk of someone turning around and putting it on the market to sell at an inflated price. So tried to come up with the compromise, that happy medium, to put a little protection there, but also make sure that families were able to get in and get what they needed for their infants. Your thoughts on that?
Thank you. That's what I was wondering.
Commissioner Menzer, questions?
No, thank you, Commissioner Edwards. That was a great question, good answer. Thank you, Gretchen, for thinking about that in advance.
No questions for me, Gretchen. Just again, thank you again for all your help in this and for really being really ahead of the curve on this.
Thank you. Thank you for your help.
Okay, next is contract with Interfaith Works for right-of-way shelter beds.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is related to the item the board may be considering this afternoon to accept money from the state Commerce Department of $5 million to address the encampments on the state's right-of-way. The afternoon item will be to receive the money if you choose to approve, and this item is to distribute the money. So this particular item is for you to consider to have a contract with Interfaith Works for $3,396,000, and this is to align for 24 shelter beds. It also includes an operational cost for 3 years. So this will be taken effective, if the board approves, between June 7, 2022 to June 30, 2025. As you heard this morning, this is the first step. You have the next item related to that as well, as to how the Commerce has reached out to Thurston County and the jurisdictions as to how we can help address the encampments on the state's right-of-way. More to come with that. There's a lot of moving pieces, and at some point we'll bring to the board up to speed on some of the next steps as we move forward. Questions? Thank you. Is here to answer the questions.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Menzer? Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes. Has anybody penciled this out as far as the $3.4 million for 3 years and 24 beds for each one of those 3 years? Have we got that penciled out to what we're gonna be paying to, are we doing that through hotels, motels, that type of thing? No.
No, the Interfaith Work has a facility.
They have a facility. And the 24 beds they have available, right, already? So
They will reserve 24 beds.
so they're gonna have 24 beds available 365 days a year for 3 years. What does that come out to on per night or per space? I don't know how we're laying that out.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kelly, you have the number.
Yes, it comes out to approximately $100 per bed per night. That's for 24/7. This is essentially, it's a shelter, but it's also a continuous stay. So those beds are dedicated to those individuals for as long as they stay in the shelter, and they are provided all sorts of support services while they're in the shelter and meals. So that's where the cost is coming from.
And then my follow-up question to that would be, what activities are allowed in that shelter? I mean, are they allowed to openly use narcotics? intoxicants. What is, you have a low barrier, high barrier type breakdown, medium barrier? Could you give us a little bit of an idea on that?
Sure. So all of our shelters in Thurston County are actually under the category of low barrier. Low barrier is about accessibility, not about behavior. So all shelters in our continuum do not allow use of illicit drugs or alcohol use on site. That is not something that any of our shelters allow or permit. They have a pretty extensive behavioral agreement around living in the shelter and maintaining their residency there that everyone agrees to. They have policies around how a person might lose access to the shelter bed as per breaking the behavioral agreements. So yeah, it's pretty standard across all of our shelters in Thurston County.
Keely, would you anticipate that possibly we'll have bed space on those 24 beds, but maybe once in a while they won't be full beds? And
So,
maybe we could help others, or is there a way to do, like women and children, they get a little area where 2 beds or something? I don't know, I'm trying to visualize.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. So within the scope of work, it is clearly stated that if there are no individuals currently being evacuated from a right-of-way, then coordinated entry would be utilized to place people into those beds so that they will not remain empty. And then with, families with children cannot stay at Unity Commons. It is only for single adults or couples without minor children. Family Support Center would be the place where they would be sent to.
Do we have any sense of how many fall within that women and children category on any of this right-of-way stuff? I haven't noticed any kids around any of those camps.
I'd say there's very, very few. I don't have any hard numbers, and I haven't heard any outreach workers mention parents with small or minor children in encampments anecdotally. Oftentimes, families with children will double up with other families or stay in their vehicle. So it's a higher probability that a family with small children will be in a vehicle rather than in an encampment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
No.
No? Okay. Next is the request for proposals for outreach and hotel leasing for unsheltered households living in Department of Transportation right away.
Yeah, similar to the previous item, Madam Chair, is for you to consider authorizing the request for proposals to receive proposals for outreach and hotel leasing for unsheltered households living on the state's right of way. This related, the funding for this particular outreach effort will come from the same $5 million and is expected to have at least $300,000 for the next 3 years. And again, it will be from July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2025. So if the board authorizes the issuance of request for proposals, the next step will be to bring a contract for the board to consider awarding this particular item depending on the request or proposals process.
And this is just to add 300,000 onto the 3.4 million, basically, right? I mean, so we're gonna keep this, there's gonna be expenditures that are eventually gonna add up to 5 million.
Yeah, the board may consider accepting the money this afternoon, 5 million, this outreach effort, and this item comes out of the 5 million.
Thank you.
Questions? Well, Commissioner Edwards, any additional questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner Menser?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Next, moving on to Public Works, item 8A, resolution of intention to establish Patterson Lake Management District number 23 and set a public hearing.
I don't think it needs much of a background information related to this item, Madam Chair. Commissioners, for your consideration is to approve the resolution of intention of establishing Patterson Lake Management District number 23. and also for you to consider setting a public hearing for July 12, 2022 at 3 in the afternoon or soon thereafter, for you to receive public testimony related to this particular action. We'll be more than happy to get into the details of this item, but I believe the board is fully aware of this particular item.
Questions, comments?
No. No, ma'am. I think we've had lots of discussion.
Okay. Moving on to item B, set a public hearing to consider updates to chapter 15.07 of Thurston County Code, illicit discharge detection and elimination.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Back in May 25th, 2022, the Board of County Commission was briefed related to this particular item, which is related to the our permit that we call the permanent ecology related to the illicit discharge detection and elimination control. Staff has gone through, have done an internal and external outreach, email, postcards, and as well as posted the changes on the Public Works site. And this particular item is for you to consider and get setting a public hearing for July 19, 2022 at 3 in the afternoon, for you to receive public testimony before you may consider taking an action to approve the changes. And Ryan Langdon is here to answer any questions you have any.
Thank you. Commissioner Menser, questions?
No.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yes. Will this address some of the, I don't know, I guess referred to it maybe as illegal camping or something, but at least camping where there is discharge into the groundwater or flowing water into the creeks and rivers without proper treatment. I mean, no septic system or anything is there. They're just dumping it into the ground. And I've gotten a few complaints from constituents that feel that type of activity is taking place. And I know the health department is working on that. But is there anything in here that's going to make that a more serious offense or give us a little better handle on how to protect the environment? And maybe, I don't know if that's for Ryan or whom, but.
So I think this particular code is limited to discharge into the public's drainage system within the right of way. So we wouldn't have the ability to act on that under this code.
How about if that was if it was being discharged and it ran into a ditch that was on the public right-of-ways ditch, you know, on a roadway?
In that particular instance, we would be able to act under this Title 1507.
So a lot of times, you know, they'll be back off the road, but it's going right onto the ground, and maybe the ditch is the closest spot. You could get a reading, if you will, through analysis testing the water or something. Then we'd be able to take some action based on that.
I believe we would. We would definitely want to work in conjunction with the health department on that, though.
Have you guys worked together at all yet?
Not related to homeless encampments.
Yeah, I don't know, some of these folks, they have something, they're living in something, they just don't treat the environment very well. Okay, so this might give us a opening to be able to do that.
Yes, there's potential for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any follow-up. I had a question, but then you answered it while Commissioner Edwards was asking questions. Okay, any additional questions or comments on this item? Okay, next is it's to set a public hearing for to amend section 2.130.030 which is the Public Records Index and costs for providing copies of public records of the Thurston County Code.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. As a matter of background, you may recall the Sheriff's Office was provided funding this year to procure body-worn cameras for all its commissioned staff, and also outfit the vehicles, patrol vehicles with cameras as well. Under the Public Record Disclosure Act, RCW 4256-120 allows for government agencies to charge actual costs for digital storage media and device provided by the agency. So the result of this is we are required to amend the current Thurston County Code 2.130030 to allow to charge actual cost when we are requested to provide public records. Because currently we are not able to recover or recuperate the full cost when we have regular public records. But this is a specific part of the law, as I understand, that allows for this type of records related to body-worn cameras to recover the full cost. So this is really the gist of that, but Under Sheriff Brady is here to elaborate more on this item and answer any questions the board may have. But before the board can obviously take an action amendment the Thurston County Code, is for you need to have a public hearing. Under Sheriff.
Okay, Commissioner Menser, questions?
Yeah, so if I understood what you said, and this is probably for Under Sheriff Brady, but we can't get the cost of paper records, or we just have chosen not to charge the full amount for paper recovery?
It's very limited on the, I understand the public records, regular public records outside of the body cams. I think we are required to pay, to recuperate the cost for paper copies. I think it's percent, a couple cents. And also we able to charge, I believe, 10 cents for every gigabyte of electronic data that we do. That is established by law, and that's how the public record is established in here.
But the new law gives new latitude for video stuff because this is so much more cumbersome.
Yeah, because I think it gives, this piece of the law, as my understanding, allows for full cost recovery related to body-worn cameras. Is that correct, Under Sheriff?
Yeah, that's correct. So good morning, Commissioner. So the current county code does allow for us to collect fees in certain situations for public records requests. And so this request is to amend that to add body camera footage. So currently, if we kept the county code in place as it is, the fee schedule, we would not be allowed to collect those fees associated with that. And just to clarify, the RCW is 4256-240 is the RCW that covers that. There's specific things in there, specific groups or individuals that are not required to pay those fees under certain circumstances. And then it also covers those that would be required. We worked very closely. In fact, a lot of this was drafted by Senior DPA Karen Horowitz over at the prosecutor's office. And so that's who brought this forward.
When we're, do you have a sense, Under Sheriff, about the cost? Like if in a typical case, like, and you've got body cam, maybe you went to the scene and you interviewed 2 or 3 witnesses, whatever the normal kind of typical case, and then somebody wants all that footage, what's that going to cost you to produce?
So the formula that we're going to use for actual costs, currently it would be based off the lowest employee salary that works in our public records unit. So currently that anticipated target rate is about 41 cents per minute, per individual object that is redacted. So I have just a rough estimate that, it would be about 41 cents per minute is the correct amount.
Oh, per minute. Okay. Oh, wait, hold on. Per minute of the person's time that had to do the work, or per minute of the footage that they're getting?
Per minute of the person's time. that is doing the work. It really depends on, we're currently working on our redaction software. We're required by law to actually use redaction software for these cases. And then it depends on the type of redaction that we do and the type of footage. So there's a lot of things that are put into place to make sure that people's personal freedoms are protected. So not showing, the inside of someone's residence, not showing certain victims. So there's a lot of different things that go into that. And some of that will depend on the type of redacting that occurs. So whether it's a blur of the person's face or, a residence or how that works. But our rough estimate at this point, is about 41 cents per minute of the actual employee's time to do that work.
That sounds really labor intensive.
It definitely can be. Yeah. The good thing is that this law does, unlike typical public records where, people can request a lot of things just in bulk form. When it comes to body camera footage, the law actually narrows down the focus of that somewhat to who can actually ask for the records and who's entitled to be able to see those records. So that is the one good thing about this particular law, specifically related to body camera footage, is it does narrow that scope. Someone couldn't just come in and say, I want to see all body camera footage for 2022. It has to be very narrowly focused.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards, questions?
Yes. Is body camera footage and vehicle camera footage handled the same and falls under that same law?
I'd have to look specifically at that, Commissioner. I believe that in-car camera footage is a little bit different. There's not those narrow restrictions per se that are in place with in-car camera as are with body camera footage. But yeah, there are some similarities as far as the protections that go towards what circumstances we can actually release as far as victims and residences and that type of thing.
So at some point though, your 41 cents per minute, is that kind of, okay, somebody calls, I don't know, they write in, they want X incident. It's a sensational case, maybe newsworthy sensational case. And they want to have everything from the time the officer responds to the scene. Okay, so there's going to be evidentiary issues that come into play. And do we have to release that which could be evidentiary and be probably detrimental to the case? Or do we have some way of saying, no, this case is an active homicide and we aren't going to go to trial for a year or better, and after that you can get it? So do we have those kind of protections built in as well?
Yeah, so it would fall under the same laws as we currently have. So if it is an open and active investigation, there is an exemption that we are able to use in those particular cases. So as long as it's material information to an open active case that we're working on, that would prevent us from having to release that footage until after that investigation is closed. Now, that wouldn't go necessarily all the way through, prosecution or a court process. That would stop at the time that we would either arrest or refer on that case, or if we were to suspend or close that case, that would then start that trigger for us releasing that information.
Thank you. I'm good.
Thank you. I want to ask about, you mentioned, it's very narrowly defined on who can request this information and the purpose of it. And I was just hoping you could go into that a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me look at a couple of these things here. So for body-worn camera footage, a person must be able to specifically identify a name of a person or persons involved in a particular incident, provide the incident or case number, provide the date, time, and location of the incident or incidents, specifically identify a law enforcement or corrections officer involved in the incidents, and then there's some additional language that's in that RCW for different groups that would be exempt from those fees, to include attorneys that require the information that are working on the case. Some of the exemptions that are in place is, again, the attorneys, a person directly involved in the incident, the executive director of the Washington State Commission on African American Affairs, Asian Pacific American Affairs, or Hispanic Affairs, and then again some different language around attorneys that would be. But so it kind of narrows that again to where someone couldn't just come say, I want all body camera footage for this day or this year or this week. It needs to be more narrowly focused to a specific incident and a specific reason.
Thank you. And then my next question is in regards to the timeline for this. We had the mayor's meeting, right? And the city of Olympia was reporting on their status, and they were surprised when we told them that, we had funded ours already. And so what's the timeline for us to be up and running?
We're really hopeful that we're going to get everything up and running this fall. Our target is that no matter what, we want to have them implemented prior to the end of this year. Certainly, we're working through a lot of things. PDR is a big piece of that. We're still working to hire additional staff into that unit. But we also want to make sure that we do things right. So we have make sure we have our policies and procedures correct, that we have our training of our deputies correct in that. But that's our target. We're hopeful to get it done earlier in the fall, but we definitely plan to have them up and running prior to the end of this year.
Thank you. Okay, any additional questions or comments?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Under Sheriff Brady. And then we'll go over standing items. That will conclude our agenda for the week of the 21st. So next, we have the review of the Transportation Benefit District meeting. And one second while I'll scroll back down to that. Okay, so call the meeting to order at 3:30 or shortly thereafter. Approval of the June 21st, 2022 agenda and approval of the meeting minutes from April 19th, 2022. Then there will be an opportunity for the public to address the board, and we have two department items. The first one is Transportation Program Review.
Yes, good afternoon, TBD Board Commissioners. Scott Lindblom, County Engineer. First item for the TBD Board's consideration is a presentation about providing you a high-level overview of some of the programs that you may not be hearing about on a regular basis. So we'll go over what we're doing in the traffic calming program, the ADA program, our striping and signing program, talk a bit about our bridge program, and finally talk about our UAS program or our drone program and how we've been able to use that to save both time and money and make our operations a bit more efficient.
Questions?
No questions.
Okay, next is funding sources update.
Thank you again. The second item is we'll be providing you a high-level overview of some of the funding sources that we have applied for, some of the grants we've received, and also give you an update on the federal funding package that we keep hearing so much about, the bipartisan infrastructure law.
Questions?
No questions.
Okay, so thank you, Scott. That will conclude our Transportation Benefit District meeting.
Thank you.
Next is proclamations and awards and advisory boards and commissions.
Good morning, Jamie Caldwell, Clerk of the Board. I've included in there the Board of Health proclamation today for the PTSD awareness. I've also included the draft proclamation for the Summer Meals Week per the request from the King County United Way to partner with them for the week of June 27th to July 1st. If you decide to move forward with the partnership, I will reach out to the Thurston County chapter of the United Way as well and get this added to our proclamation schedule. As far as the boards and commissions, there were 5 new reappointment applications received for the Fair Board. I've included all 5 for your review. The current members requesting reappointment all have their terms expire August 31st of 22. Vogue May's reappointment application is included in your packet again as well. Her term on the Housing Authority expires on June 27th. And I did confirm with the staff contact that the term for Sheila Grauer-Fay on the EMS Council expires at the end of July. This was the applicant that Commissioner Mejia asked for verification of her term expiration the week before last. That's all I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so let's start with the Summer Meals Week and let's make a decision on that, whether we're going to do it or not. Because they have been waiting for a while on our decision. So, Jamie, can you go a little bit over it and again?
Essentially, it's just a recap of the struggle that many families do deal with in the the statistical information about families that deal with the struggle for the Summer Meals Week. The costs that many families incur over the summer months because their costs go up when they have the children at home longer during the day as compared to when they're in school and they're able to access school lunches.
Jamie,
I'm sorry.
I apologize. No, I was asking about the background information, like who submitted this request.
I'm sorry, I apologize. It was the Thurston. I'm sorry, it was the King County United Way. They're going to be proclaiming that week as Summer Meals Week, and so they reached out and requested that we partner with them and proclaim it Summer Meals Week here in Thurston County as well. When we received that request, Commissioner Mentzer's aide had suggested that we also reach out that if we do decide to move forward with that, to touch base with the Thurston County chapter of the United Way to see about having them present to accept the proclamation.
Okay, any thoughts on this? Commissioner Edwards?
By making this proclamation, what are we gonna accomplish other than maybe awareness? Are we gonna do anything else?
Just that.
Just awareness. We had a discussion sometime back about limiting the number of proclamations that we make. So, I mean, where do we draw the line? I know the schools and everything they're still putting out meals. Are they coordinating with this for over the summer? So, I don't know exactly. I don't have any little kids, so maybe I'm not the one to really ask about the problem because I see the void being filled quite a bit, but I don't know that for a fact. So I guess I'd like to hear more about maybe what the need is and how serious it is because as far as proclamations, I mean, how many can we do? How many do we cover? There's a lot of groups that do a lot of good things. And are we gonna recognize all of them? I think we've had that discussion before.
Thank you. Commissioner Mentzer?
So this is proposed for the 28th?
Yeah, for that meeting week, because then it would coincide with the week that they're asking us to proclaim as Summer Meals
No
Week.
other proclamations on schedule that week?
No, the last one that we're doing was this PTSD awareness for the Board of Health, and that should be it for this month.
We've never done this one before?
No.
And it was a nice request because it came from King County in that way. So
Yeah, I'd like to reserve my, I mean, you know, I've gone through this before and stated my position. I really, when there's a group of community members that want to present something, I want to support that. When it's like us having to drag people forward because it's just on our schedule, I'm not that excited about those. And this coming from out of county, and I don't know that there's a group of people in Thurston County that want to be here and talk to us about this or share something. So I'm inclined to not go forward with this, but I don't have a huge problem since there are no other proclamations, but that's just my feeling about it.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
can you follow up on the Commissioner's statement there? Are we going to have assurances from someone that, okay, we would, if we made this proclamation, that the result is awareness, okay, but also that we're recognizing this as an issue and we're gonna have food availability set up at X, Y, and Z. Because if we're not, I guess, where do we draw the line from that outside in? So that's good for me, thanks.
no, that will not be part of this proclamation to get assurances as to how we're gonna be resolving the issue, no.
There is, I mean, Commissioner's right though, there is a summer meals program through, I know Olympia School District, which we could, if we wanted to, we could put some information about that or make reference to that if we want to go there, but it's not what this is.
For me, for being something that it wasn't even our Thurston County United Way that brought this forward, but something from King County, seems very generalized to me, right? It doesn't really offer kind of the resources that we have here in county. I kind of feel the same way as Commissioner Menser on this. Not really inclined, just because of all the proclamations we have in place, even though we don't have one that day, not being from someone here locally who's really pushing for this, and not knowing whether anyone's really going to be interested or show up or available for this time. I'm not really, but I just wanted to make a decision on this since it's been on our agenda for a bit now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that decision has been made.
Okay, next, with the advisory commissions, with the Fair Board and the Emergency Medical Services Council, and there's another one for Stormwater. The reappointments, do we want to move forward with those? Do we want to wait?
I mean, for me, Storm and Surface Water and Fair Board. Is there any, okay, so I know Fair Board's a no-brainer because there's lots of vacancies. So that's like, and the folks there do a great job. So Storm and Surface Water, is there any other applicants there? I remember we appointed Ms. Simmons a couple of years ago, but
Not currently, as far as I'm aware, but I can double check on that and circle back around.
I mean, I don't have any problem with that, but just want to make sure everybody has opportunity to throw their application in. Area Agency on Aging, is that one that Commissioner Edwards can comment on, or?
I think the board, I think that volunteer board is full. And this might be just kind of waiting in the wind, I guess, until we're, is that right?
Okay, you're just letting us know somebody applied.
Yeah.
To follow up on that one, they actually are anticipating a board member to be resigning. And so once that resignation is made formally, then I was going to reach back out to Ms. McGaffigan and make sure she still has interest in filling that spot. She has been recommended by the contact for the LMTAAA to fill that position once it actually does become vacant.
So we don't need to do anything now. What about this Housing Authority one? I don't remember where we stood on that one. My seatmates remember. I don't know. This is a reappointment. Do we have any applicants?
I don't think there's any applicants related to this. And I think the conversation that you had, the board wanted to revisit the terms of the housing authority. I don't think that really materialized in the formal conversation. I can probably bring that up again on the next planning session, which is scheduled for July 15th, to see what options the board may want to consider.
I advocated for, this is probably before Commissioner Mejia's time, but I advocated for term limits.
Yeah.
But if there's no applicants for this slot, that kind of maybe undercuts my thought. I mean, the thought was housing authority is a really important group. The law gives them a lot of latitude to do different things. There's people, housing obviously is the #1 issue just about in the county. There are a lot of people on that board that have been there for like 20 years. So, I was approached, I think all the way back to when I was a candidate for office that, hey, you know, housing authority could be doing X, Y, and Z, and you know, we need sort of like new thinking or whatever. I mean, just to kind of mix it up. So I was like, well, you know, if we've got folks on there for 20 years, maybe we need to have 2 4-year terms. That's 8 years worth of service. That was my thought, but we don't ever seem to have a huge outpouring of applicants for the positions that come up. So I don't, you know, maybe it's not necessary. I don't know.
They've been announced though. If an opening is not announced on our, you know, kind of like, I feel we get an influx whenever a committee's announced that they have opening, we get kind of a little bump on applicants.
Yeah, I don't know if this one's been announced, but I can tell you that there was one a couple of years ago that we did aggressively announce. And we might have gotten 2 applicants. I think we had 2 that we had to pick from. It wasn't a massive outpouring of interest,
Yeah.
but, so I don't know.
So maybe I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
No, I was just going to give direction, which is, from what I'm hearing, is ready to move with the Fair Board. So those can be added to, yes, Commissioner Edwards?
Are we gonna do anything on the Ag Advisory Committee? I mean, that's been hanging fire for a long while, and we've got some good applicants, it looks like. I guess my question is why not, but, I see the county manager's got an answer.
As you may remember, the board directed me to send an email to the chair of the Ag Committee to request for information before the board considers the appointments. I sent that email, I'll say probably 4 weeks ago, and I included your assistance. I'll be more than happy to give you a copy of that email. And I have not received that information yet. That is, I believe, what the board wanted to have that information in place before you can consider appointments.
Yeah, and the Ag Committee, and I don't know if this happened to my seatmates, the Ag Committee sent a couple of representatives to meet with me, like emissaries from the committee, to meet with me about these appointments. And what they said was, I explained kind of what my thought was about having that information to diversify the farmer member positions, and they seemed to understand that. They encouraged us to really diversify the committee, use the non-farmer member seat. So when we have a non-farmer member seat, that's where they encourage, this is them coming to me saying, that's where we should sort of think outside the box and maybe add different, you know, people that, you know, you wouldn't think might fit, but maybe they're a good fit. But, you know, then on the farmer member seats, you know, then make sure they've got really good experience within the Thurston County, you know, demographics for our agricultural economy. So that's what I think the information we asked for is to reflect on that so that we can figure out, okay, you know, how many cattle ranchers, let's say, how many cattle raisers is you know, is that 10% of Thurston County's ag community? Is that 70%? Just so we have a sense when we've got multiple applicants, can we make sure we're reflecting the full panoply of types of agricultural interests in the county. So that was the thought, and they seem to be okay with that. And for me, as soon as kind of we get that information, I'm ready to take this up as soon as possible.
Yeah. That email request was sent on May 17th.
Okay, May 17th, okay. I would just comment, Madam Chair, that we don't have a non-farmer that I see on there, but those 4 individuals are very active. And I think Mr. Dolman was like a dairy farmer, which is completely different than a beef farmer, for an example. So, Kevin Jensen, who's been on there, he's going for a reappointment, but there's a case where that's I guess his main activity is beef, but that's not solely it. Glenn Shorno is kind of a ground farmer, beans and corn, and makes a substantial impact on, he does business with large Costco type things, and so the larger operations. I think this Winther, I think maybe is tied in with a little bit of ranching and as far as cattle ranching and beef. So you got a pretty good breakdown of different ones in the farmer area there.
How many aren't there 2 farmer seats only though, that are open? If we were to fill them today?
I'll have to double check on that. I'm not sure right off the top of my head. This was information that was carried over and gathered when Amy was still here. So
If I look at the thing on page 2, it says 2 farmer and 2 non-farmer seats are available. So only 2 of those 4 are getting in. Looks like to me. And the committee, they gave me kind of their assessment of each of the candidates. And their folks have met with me, and I think we'll be able to fill those as soon as we can. I don't know, I'm just giving my 2 cents about it, but.
I guess how about if I take it on to call somebody over there and find out why we haven't had a response? So it's been almost a month, right?
May 17th is when I sent the email to the chair.
Okay, well, I'll do that. Good. My seatmates so desire.
Yeah, I think we encouraged them to work with Sarah Moorhead and Steve Bramwell, because Stephen.
I'll forward that email to you again.
Stephen had told me that he could help them assemble that in pretty short order, so hopefully.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move forward with the Fair Board, and then we'll wait for more information on the rest. Okay, it is 12:10. And we still have a couple of items to go through.
Yes, so maybe I can suggest that hopefully the central services restructure plan will be, I have not received any questions from you, so I will ask the board to make a decision to move forward or not on that proposal. Hopefully, and so what is the position of the board on that?
Okay, the Central Services Restructure Plan, Commissioner Edwards.
Well, I'm looking at my notes when we had that discussion, and there's 2 concerns that I have on there, and one of them is retention. Are we addressing retention through this process and going to help in that regard? And the other is inflation and recession, and unfortunately, possibly depression. Is it going to be that necessary as we go into potential layoffs? Nobody likes to talk about that, but I think it's a reality we've had to deal with before. So I'm not sure that I'm ready to move ahead with that.
Commissioner Messer?
I'm ready, I agreed to move forward.
Commissioner Mejia? Sorry, you muted.
Thumbs up for me.
Okay, 2-1, thank you.
Okay, we already addressed the COVID-19 resolution discussion. And then there's the 2022-2023 docket Black Lake Quarry request.
I think that's going to require more time, Madam Chair. I hate to rush this. And I don't have time next Tuesday morning, since I want to reserve that for the bond council. What I can do is bring that to next week's commissioners check-in to have a conversation.
Okay. Yes, because I don't want to be pushing this out much longer. This has been on our agenda a couple times and we've had to push it off. Next is the 5-member commission.
Yeah, this is gonna be hopefully pretty simple. Not simple, quick. Nothing is simple. Sorry, nothing is simple.
Yeah, what are you thinking about?
The docket is moved to next Thursday. Thank you. First of all, we received some information that there is strong evidence the county has reached over 300,000. That final confirmation will be done, but later in the month. I provided to you during the planning session some of the dates as to what the next steps that we need to take. Attached in your agenda is a little bit variations of those dates. And so if you see this attachment, I have a draft resolution to have on the ballot language ready on June 24th. And on June 28th, we'll bring the board for you to consider setting a public hearing. It is not required for you to hold a public hearing, and this is my request. My question to you, do you want to have a public hearing on this?
About the 5-member thing?
Yeah, no, for the ballot resolution.
For the 5-member thing?
Yeah.
I want to have a public hearing. I think public hearings help develop trust.
I agree.
Yes.
So the schedule that I'm providing to you and your attachment applies. So again, I will bring an item for you to set the public hearing June 28th. On July 19th, you will hold the public hearing. And at that point, I would recommend for you to approve the resolution in the ballot language. And that will put us in the position to submit to the county auditor on August 2nd for the general election. And the Port of Olympia Commission is tracking on the same schedule. That's all I have for you. Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
When it comes to a plan, just doing it and voting on it is going to be one thing, but do we have a plan on what 5 districts are going to look like? Do we have a presentation plan that we as commissioners might move forward? I made mention that last week I talked to the Lacey Rotary about this topic, and I think it was fairly well received. I don't know how many people would have actually seen that presentation. Probably about 40 people in person, but it was being live streamed to the membership, which could have been another 100 or so, I suppose. So I think the public is ready to hear about it. I believe it went over very positively by the questions and stuff I was asked later. But are we allowed to kind of put together a game plan selling this issue to the public, or are we on our own on how we approach it? I don't know the legalities or something here.
So let me attempt to answer that question. First, we need to have a formal confirmation that the county has moved into the 300, below the 300,000 population. That will come at the end of this month.
Oh, okay.
And then after the board decides to submit and approves the ballot measure and submit it to the auditor on August 2nd, then August 3rd is going to begin. And I laid out a schedule on the planning session as to what it takes.
Okay.
I can probably walk you through that schedule again.
No, but I know we're gonna get asked questions, because I got asked questions
So
about the
at some
district.
point, obviously, if the board decides to have this ballot proposition on the November ballot, we as a county government, we cannot use any resources to promote.
That's what I was
To
wondering.
promote that, but certainly we can develop an informational.
The truth, we
document.
tell the whole truth, nothing but truth.
An informational document that can probably help the voters to get informed about this proposal, and that's part of the strategy.
And I just, I'd like to add or suggest that I've been talking about this a lot. So I've
talked about it in other groups. This is the most recent since we went over the threshold.
You did a formal, and I've done like kind of not just mentioning it, like giving kind of a little bit of a summary, maybe 5-10 minutes. I've done that like a dozen times every time I have an opportunity, I'm talking about this so folks can kind of hear about it and talk about it, ask questions. I know we've entrusted the chair of the board with the responsibility for drawing districts with the chair of the Port Commission. And before that process starts, I think it'd be nice to have a conversation so we could give Commissioner Mejia so Commissioner Edwards and I can give our 2 cents and have a discussion about what her strategy might be in going forward with that. That would be great, because I know it's gonna happen fast.
There's gonna be a lot of conversations, and they start August 3rd through September 29. That's when the work really begins on. So you will be involved through the whole process.
Okay, great.
But just a reminder, at least from my perspective, is 3 major objectives of the redistricting. One is obviously to balance the population among the 5 new districts. That's Second is we will not be out-sitting a sitting commissioner out of a district. That's number 2. And hopefully we can accomplish the districts by not splitting precincts. Those are the 3 major goals of this process, but there's more to it. And you will be involved in engaged in that one.
Staggered election.
That's after the fact.
And then,
And then for the county, there's no at-large seat.
Yep.
That's a question I've been asked a lot while I've been talking about it, is whether there will be an at-large seat, and county code does not allow, for the port it does, but that county, so.
Madam Chair, it's not as county code, it's state law, but.
plus, and then the important corollary is that even though the port can, they're not going to, because the whole point of our MOU was to have our districts aligned. So they will not have, there will be no at-large seats, by law in our case, by agreement in their case.
Right. And speaking to your question, Commissioner, if the voters approve this proposition, we'll be in the position to submit to the county auditor the new 5 districts. And then the board will have to make another decision when the elections will be for the 2 additional commissioners. And the staggered time will be part of that decision. That will be after the fact.
Boy, I don't know. The public's gonna be asking questions. They don't like it when you say, well, we'll figure that out. Trust me, I'm from the government. Take my word for it. I'll get it figured out.
Yeah, but I cannot give you an answer to that if the board has not discussed it.
No, I mean, I guess we need to discuss it. I think one thing that we can continue to move forward on, I think, as far as I know, all the commissioners at the port and here are still agreeing that, we're wanting to move forward on this and get it accomplished. I mean, we have other differences, but this one we seem to agree on. So I don't want to delay any longer than we have to having those kind of discussions. But I do think they're important.
Absolutely, you're free to have this discussion. So I don't know what do you expect. I can probably provide as much information as I can for you to have those discussions. So let me know.
About the election cycles you're talking about?
Well, the district, I mean, how the staggering and all that kind of stuff. I'm gonna make a suggestion here that I got outvoted 3-4 months ago, or whenever it was, I don't know when it was, but we decided we weren't gonna publicize or weren't gonna televise certain things. I would hope that this will never fall into that category, that it does not get recorded and televised. So like when it comes to our Thursday information sharing or something, I think it'd be a terrible mistake not to have public debate on that issue. So I don't know if we want to resend that and I get to say I won because we're going back to full televised or not. I just think it's good government, but I think this is a good example of why it's so important to develop trust with the community and have good government. So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So with that, we'll be moving on to the executive session.
Yes, Madam Chair. Elizabeth, how long you think it will take?
Just probably about 15 minutes,
Okay, thank you.
I'm guessing.
Can I ask one question before we go in?
Yeah.
I circulated a draft letter on the Phase 2 carbon program request, consistent with our planning session discussion. Did my seatmates have a chance to look at that? Any concerns?
No
Is that
comments from,
legacy forest?
Yeah.
no comments from Commissioner Mejia. I have not received any.
Yeah, I
feedback from you.
don't know that I had concerns. Oh, that's the legacy forest, don't cut the trees.
Well, but this was this was the kind of intermediate thing of saying include our legacy forest in Hillary Fran's Commissioner's carbon project, Phase 2.
As she moves forward.
As they're moving forward to identify
But
acres.
protect these certain
Put these
areas,
pieces.
I think you've
Yeah.
identified some.
Put these older trees of Thurston counties in your program.
That are on public land. And
Yeah, and they'd get carbon, we get money out of the carbon.
kind of bypass them for logging, right? I mean, don't log these.
Yeah, she's gonna add
Legacy.
7,500 acres, and we're just kind of lobbying for our older trees in Thurston County's Cal State Forest to be included in those acres.
Yeah, okay, I don't think I had any issues on that.
Okay, cool. Cool.
So,
I didn't have any
Untweak to
comments.
the attachment, the county manager took touch base with me.
I missed that, Chair.
Yeah, no, I just said that I didn't have any comments with it. I thought it was a very good letter, so thank you, Commissioner Menser, for that. And, ready to sign my name whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you.
I'll work with Commissioner Mensah on the attachments and just to expedite the process, I will add your e-signatures on that letter.
Okay, so any other commissioner item?
All right, we got, how many can we have?
I do, but I'm gonna wait on mine because that was the only burning one.
Okay, so we're gonna go into executive session per RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1I to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is or is likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency. Legal opinions. Commissioner's action may follow. It is 12:25. We'll be in executive session for 25 minutes. So with that.
Yep, let me announce outside, Madam Chair, and we'll close the video feed.
We live?
Hold on.
You are live, Commissioner.
Go ahead.
Okay, and we are back from executive session. It is 12:55 p.m. We were in executive session per RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1I to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is or is likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency legal opinions. No commissioner's action follows that. And with that, commissioners, anything else before we adjourn?
I think we've had enough, Madam Chair. You whipped us enough today.
We are adjourned and we will be back at 2 p.m. Thank you.